I'm going to call to order Board of Education meeting, June 24th, 6 o'clock. John, take attendance.
All board members are present.
Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Point of order, Mr. President, it is 6:10.
10. Okay. All right, we have one public comment. I'm just going to read a quick statement before we invite up Sarah Lips, or Sarah, you can come up. I'm just going to read. So public comment is an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Education. It's not a time for dialogue. If you would like a response, please provide the board, which you have, with your name and contact information. You will receive a response within 2 weeks. In the interest of time, the Open Meetings Act provides the boards may place limits on the time allotment for an individual comment. That limit will be 3 minutes. In addition to making a public comment, may also email the board at any time. Any comment that contains profanity, threats, defamatory remarks, or is otherwise exempt from the First Amendment protection will be excluded from public comment. If you are speaking on behalf of a group or organization, please indicate who you represent. Thank you for taking the time to address the Board of Education. That you'll have 3 minutes, Sarah.
So I have a question,
Sure.
curveball. If you could not start my time yet, I have a question. On the bottom of the agenda that's posted right under adjournment, it says, clearly in the interest of fairness, the board will announce a speaker time limit based on the number of cards submitted and available time. May I please request shortly extended time and not to be cut off at 3 minutes, since I'm the only public comment and there haven't been public comments the last several meetings?
Is everyone okay if we extend the time to up to 5 minutes?
Thank you very much.
How much do you think you will need?
I said 5. 5,
Depends
okay?
which version I use. I
5 minutes, Howard.
thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, I went down a rabbit hole yesterday. Following my involvement in the bond on the 2019-2020 bond, I haven't missed many live board meetings, and if I do, I watched the recording. I missed Monday's meeting, and as of today, I still didn't see the link shared, so I went on YouTube to see if the recording was there. I found a November link and decided to open it to see what the big issues that were discussed pre-COVID and pre my involvement on the bond, normal times. It just so happens that it was Pat's final interview I stumbled upon. It was interesting, eye-opening, and honestly pretty upsetting. In November, I would have thought that the principles that were discussed in that interview would have in fact guided our administration and Board of Education with the difficult decision-making during the unknown, upcoming, unprecedented times only 4 months later. I'll be referring back to this interview throughout my statement. Former trustee Cynthia Van Oyen, is that right, asked how we can ensure retention of students and not lose them to private schools. Little did she know a pandemic would hit 4 months later, and this question would be key and significantly impactful to the future of our district. Pat's response was that the first way to work on retention is to find out why students are leaving. Well, the decisions this board has made over the last 16 months has directly impacted student enrollment in our district. The intent to enroll survey that parents were asked to complete a few months ago had results that were not shared with parents. Why? What was the enrollment projection? I think it's also of importance that you have no concept of the students you've lost over the last year who haven't yet started in the district, incoming kindergartners. I can tell you personally, I know 11 incoming kindergartners who had planned on attending Lone Pine, Conant, or Way, and within the last 6 months have enrolled in private school. These are students you lost. My daughter is very unfortunately one of them. Most of our friends in this position have younger siblings, and you'll likely lose them too. You have the chance to change this and to follow through with the answer that was given in the November 2019 interview. The plan of recruitment and retention of students was directly linked to transparency and listening to parents, finding out why they are leaving and making changes. We have been told time and time again that BH is waiting for guidance from the state and NDHHS. Well, the state is now open. As of Tuesday, any individual, including children, can gather outdoors or indoors without masks and without a maximum capacity. Yes, I'm sure part of the holdup to still not releasing policies specifically on summer, but looking ahead to the fall, is that MDHHS is still recommending masks in the classroom regardless of vaccination status. I'd like to take a moment to read the definition of recommendation from Merriam-Webster. Recommendation is the act of recommending. Recommending is to suggest an act or course of action. suggest, to mention or imply as a possibility, to propose as desirable or fitting, or to offer consideration as a hypothesis. Mention, propose, offer for consideration, hypothesis. That being said, why is it so difficult to give our families this recommendation but still allow them, why is it so difficult to give our families this recommendation but still allow them to choose what is best for their children regarding masking? Why is there still so much discussion on what is recommended if it's only a recommendation? Giving me the choice to have my son go to school without a mask on is not taking away that choice from the next family. However, requiring it based on a recommendation is absolutely taking away that choice. Wouldn't it be incredible and equitable if everyone had a choice? The choice to mask, the choice to test, the choice to attend BV. We know they have the choice to attend private school and that they are making that choice. The last thing I want to mention is the whole child presentation relating to the fall recommendations from MDHHS. I assume you've watched this, but if not, MDHHS is proposing weekly testing of all healthy kids and is linking it to funding. I hope when this is proposed to you, you truly look at the whole child and make a strong, child-centered, and brave decision, and do not enact this recommendation. Again, the key word is recommendation. We parents who fought for in-person learning and witnessed meeting after meeting with endless reasons as to why it wasn't possible to return to learning on March 15th with weeks of plan time saw an immediate change of course when $2 million was hung over your nose. Imagine the trust that was lost in that one moment when it passed 7-0 without any questions or concern that were present just 2 weeks prior and implemented a start date 2 weeks earlier than we were told was the earliest possible date. If you're concerned with funding, let's think about student retention and how we can gain funding that way. Let's not lose more funding because of the choices the district is making. These are things you can control. Let's not impose these recommendations as mandates on students, causing more kids to leave. They will. And the longer you take to be transparent with the plans, the more parents question the ability of the administration. We were blindsided last year. Let's not recreate that dark moment in our district. At the end of the meeting, for final comments, Mr. Barron commented on the, quote, different lanes each of you have. He stated, quote, as a board member, we are responsible for the what. As superintendent, you would be responsible for the how. So if the problem is a how question, that's not our job. That's a problem for you to figure out with your cabinet. In conclusion, let's lead with example and do what you say. Stop questioning, pressuring, deciding with your personal views and agenda, and impacting the work that the superintendent that you hired is trying to do. Pat, please show parents that you are a strong leader, that you are the strong leader that we saw in the interview. Make a policy and follow the recommendations, but don't turn those recommendations into requirements, because they are not. Sure, things may change, plans can be modified. If there are in fact new requirements, your staff has scrambled enough with reworking plans that took hours and hours to plan on a moment's notice. Why not release a statement for summer school policies now and have it remain in effect through the fall unless otherwise required from the state? This will give parents the information they need and deserve when making a decision for the fall, whether it is staying in person, attending BV, or a very likely option leaving the district.
Lipson, can you wrap up, please?
I can wrap it up. I have one more statement. In conclusion, with current recommendations and upcoming recommendations from MDHHS regarding masking and testing of our healthy kids, I ask you, will you truly think about the whole child? And I intentionally use that word because of their proposal. Or only look at money the district may gain to take away parents' choice? Back to the final interview, President Colin asked a follow-up question inquiring about the strategy to save students who are thinking about leaving the district. You've been told the whole year that families are considering leaving and continue to be told that depending on what the fall looks like, more will leave. In this response, it was stated that every parent wants their child to feel valued. Taking away a parent's choice does not leave them with a feeling that their child is valued. It was also stated, how can you improve to get better when you don't know why people are leaving? Well, you do know why they're leaving, and unless you make changes now, be transparent, bold, confident, and swift, more will leave. Thank you very much for the extended time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for those of you who were looking at me. I really appreciate that also. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. With that, Pat, COVID update?
Sure, if we could pull up the slide deck, please. Oh, sorry, there we go. All right. So looking at the vaccine rate, currently we're at 61.3% of those that received at least the first dose of the vaccine. However, the rate of daily vaccines have slowed down. And so the goal of reaching 70% in the state of Michigan, it's not going to be by July 4th, which President Biden had kind of had as an earmark or a goal, but there's definitely progress being made there. Next slide, please. Daily case count has continued to decrease. We're seeing a couple days that are in single digits, and then we're in the 20s and 30s for others. And these are some of the lowest cases we've seen in the past 12 months. Next slide, please. Yeah, right? I don't mind sharing the report today. Hospitalizations are down. Patients not in critical care are down. Patients on ventilators are down. And critical patients are down as well. And this is statewide. Next slide. Average cases per day in the United States right now are about 14,000. This is a huge change. If you remember back at the peak, we were averaging over 250,000 cases per day. To be at 14,000 is something else. Next slide. I didn't know when or if we would ever get to this point where we are in green in both case count and percent positive in Oakland County. I remember reflecting back in August, talking about going back and talking to the epidemiologists and their feedback, and they kept saying, don't worry, you're not going to be at green in both cases for this year. And to see us actually get there, even if it might be short-lived in new cases because it's, one or less than one to get there, is pretty much good news all the way around regarding COVID. Also talking to some of the epidemiologists, they're now shifting their focus on how do we live with the disease? What can we do? What are the therapeutics we're going to be able to prescribe and use to move forward? Next slide, please. And that is the last one. President Colin?
Any questions? Okay. With that, next on the agenda is President's report. The only report I want to say is that I want to congratulate, everyone in our district. We've made it through the year. Staff, families, students. I'll just indicate from, we were all at the high school graduation. East Hills, West Hills, and BHMS had it outdoors at our high school. Those were great events. Lone Pine, Way, Eastover, and Conant had clap outs, for their students. And, again, those were great events. I know some of us attended the International Academy at the high school. That was great events. Some of us attended Bowers. That was a great event. Some of us attended the Wing Lake. That was a great event. So just simply congratulate to everyone in the district. It's been a hard year, but we made it through. And then as everyone, I'm sure, and Bloomfield virtual, for those students as well, congratulations. Everyone made it through the year, and the end of the year was great for all of our families. So congratulations to all of our families, students, staff, and everyone in the district for making this year, at least the end of the year, as great as possible. That's all I have for my President's report.
So I also echo Paul's statement. I want to thank the staff, the students, the community, and their board for support throughout the year. As a former history teacher, teaching about the 1918 pandemic and other things, and you know where you're at when certain things happen. And we've said this a million times. I never expected after 59 days on a new job, after being someplace else for 26 years, I'd be sitting in a room saying schools are closed and not knowing what the next steps were as I was still learning everyone's name. But without the support of the staff, students, the community, and the board, I know it definitely would have been a lot more difficult, and I wouldn't have made it through. So thank you to everyone. Excited about our summer camps. We have young people in camps, whether at the farm or on school property. Excited about our Summer Learning Academy and what's going on there. And I know it's kind of been pigeonholed maybe as like, well, this is what we're doing for COVID, but really this is going to be what we're going to continue to offer. Not only for those who might be seeking to learn a couple new skills or maybe catch up, but maybe those students that are interested in accelerating a little bit further. And you're fifth grade, but you want to get a little further ahead in math. So looking at the academic areas we can use in the summer moving forward. And then looking forward to next school year. One of the things I had, been excited about when I first took the job is we'll get through the winter, it will be cold, and then the fall will come and you have opening day. And the excitement of opening day and greeting the staff, and then the first day of school and being able to visit all the buildings and seeing that excitement and knowing the kids spent all that time picking out their first outfit. What are you going to wear that first day? And the excitement of not getting any sleep. Looking forward to that. And I'm kind of rambling on, so just thank you to everyone. President Colin, I'll turn it over to you.
That's okay. Thank you, Superintendent Watson. With that, Jonathan, consent agenda?
Okay, here we go. I move that the Board of Education approve the recommendations detailed in the consent agenda as follows. Request to approve minutes from the regular meeting of May 26, 2021. Request to approve minutes from the closed session of June 10, 2021. Request to approve minutes from the study session of June 10, 2021. Request to approve minutes from the closed session of June 21st, 2021. Request to approve minutes from the special meeting of June 22, 2021. Request to approve the monthly financial reports as presented by Tina Kostick. Request to approve distribution reports, also presented by Tina Kostick. And, it's quite lengthy. I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of pilot furniture totaling $150,279.20 to be paid from the bond fund from NBS Commercial Interiors in the amount of $147,710.24, and from Tierney in the amount of $2,568.96. I move that the Board of Education approve the food service management contract renewal with Aramark Educational Services, LLC, to provide food services management for the 2021-22 fiscal year. I move that the Board of Education approve a one-year extension through June 30, 2022 of the current Traub building lease to the International Academy Consortium with rent of $394,000 for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. I move that the Board of Education approve the application of a grant through the Michigan Council of Arts and Cultural Affairs and Arts and Education as required by the nonprofit organization. I move that the Board of Education approve the personnel actions as presented by Keith McDonald. I move that the Board of Education approve membership with the Metro Bureau in the amount of $2,912.50 for the 2021-2022 school year. And finally, I move that the Board of Education approve membership in the Michigan High School Athletic Association for the 2021-22 school year.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Support.
Support? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, consent passes. Public hearing on adoption of the 2021-2022 budget. Tina?
You're on mute,
You're on mute, Tina. Give her a minute. She's calling in, yeah. Her screensaver looks like she's down the hall, but I guess she's not.
That's true.
Or maybe she is, I
That's
don't
her
know.
office.
What-
Maybe she's talking to IT.
Any more consent agenda?
Do you need a glass of water, John?
This may not be a team issue because we've had a system one that's out tonight, so we're working through it, so be patient, please.
No problem.
Should we move along?
Yeah, we can move along.
Come back.
Yeah, we can go to general discussion and go back when Tina dials
Let me
in.
ask you, sir, did you want to make a public comment at all? No. Okay, very good, thank you.
So we can go to general discussion. 8A, Civa, FFLA report.
Thank you, Paul. So a quick update on the FFLA committee meeting, which was held on June 17th, last Thursday at 4. The guests in attendance, Paul Wills from Plant Moran Cressa, Daryl Dombrow and Brian Goby from Martin Mallow, Paul Corneliuson from JL French, Rob Dureca, and David Palmer and Marianne Ramsak from Aramark, in addition to the three of us. So firstly, on the bond program, everything's still green on track. Paul Wills presented the results of bid pack 3, and he's going to present that to the board today for construction at North Hills Middle School. Total of 116 bids received, over 5.5 average per category. So he's going to propose awarding to the lowest bid in all these categories, the total awards under the budget, and he's also going to talk about background on the process that he's going to present shortly. We also reviewed the latest dashboard, and we will be reconciling on a quarterly basis going forward after the awards come out. We also talked about the potential purchase of land for the transportation center, and it is under consideration to shift the land purchase to the Series 2, given that there's enough time for the transportation center or the land for the transportation center to be purchased and the transportation center to be built in time per the original plan. So it will most likely move to Series 2.
Or not.
Might move to Series 1.
That's a sign.
All right.
Tina walked in the building and then.
That's our system reboot, because that's the system we were locked out
Okay,
of.
are we still streaming?
We're still
Okay.
going, so we're in a little dim light, so bear
Okay.
with us. We're trying to reboot when in doubt, reboot, so.
Thanks, Vicki.
All right, thank you. All right, back on track here, excuse me. So as I talked about, purchase of land will most likely be moved to the Series 2 round. Rob Dureca and Dave Shulkin presented the bid for the pilot room purchase, which is also on the agenda for today. And looking at the scope of services in our owner's rep agreement, we realized the original proposal did not include services related to furniture and technology. So we're amending the agreement through an addendum to include both of those areas. So that was pretty much it on the bond fund. I will talk next about food services. David Palmer and Marianne Ramsak were present to give us an update on our meals and how we executed over the past year. Federal funding offset these cost increases, and the goal to incorporate local products has been very successful. And this cost increase of $30,000 was offset by a grant for half the costs. The next step is to utilize Bowers Farm produce, and there are plans underway to execute that this year. Middle school students worked with Marianne on sustainability of the packaging, and essentially ended up eliminating all the foam in our packaging. And the teams continue to work with the prep transition program, and students have been great employees. So there's a wellness committee meeting planned for the fall with various stakeholders focused on multiple topics, including sustainability. And that is all I have to report. Any questions?
Yeah. Siva, do you happen to know if the Wellness Committee is the same bunch of folks who, so you know, were first convened before COVID to make certain decisions?
They didn't, I mean, I know what you're referring to. They didn't
Yeah.
mention that at the meeting.
Yeah.
So, they didn't mention who it was, but I know
Okay.
what you're talking about. We'd probably have to ask Tina.
Okay, thanks.
We can get back to that.
Okay.
Lisa?
That was one of my questions too, so we didn't mention the person. The other one was, you said the owner's rep contract was amended to include furniture and technology. So who amended it and why?
If I can, I believe Pat and Tina are working to amend the contract, and we're waiting to see the contract. And the addendum will be included, and it was, we've essentially supported that recommendation.
Okay.
It was an oversight.
Okay.
When the contract was initially developed.
Okay. No more.
So that's under progress.
Okay.
Any other questions? Michelle?
Michelle?
And I do apologize if I missed this before. So we're looking to
I'm sorry,
purchase
Michelle,
land.
you have to speak right into the mic, or the folks
I
at
put
home
it
can't
closer.
hear. There you go.
Sorry about that. Oh, that's kind of. So I have a quick question. So I do apologize if I missed this before. For the land purchase, do we not currently have any space that we could currently use for the buses? For the busing center?
Right now, the East Hills parking area is being used as the transportation center. There was money set aside, and Howard and Paul jump in here if I'm incorrect, but there was money set aside in the budget to procure land as part of Series 1. And looking at the timing plan, we feel there's enough time to procure the land at the beginning of Series 2, which is the second half of the bond, and still meet the timing requirements for getting the building for the transportation center ready. Now, there's other questions that the board has around the location of the transportation center, the facilities, whether it be for electric buses, whatever, but that's yet to be answered, and the team's working through that.
Thank
Just
you.
so you know,
Thank you.
the bus depot is on the east side of East Hills campus, up a little driveway that no one really, it's not accessible for parents, or it just sits there. It's just used for bus drivers. And if we are to tear down the bus depot and rebuild a new one, you got to have the swing space in terms of doing that. You got to have a green space and somewhere to do it. And there isn't enough land on the East Hills campus to do that. So the thought is, and again, as Siva said, the transportation plan needs to be reevaluated over the next year or two. But the plan initially was to buy a new piece of land, build in that green space, and then shut down the old facility and utilize the new one.
So just add a little more to that, if that's okay. Part of the plan is also to make sure that plant services and transportation are together, so that we can not have two separate spaces to have them in, but have them in one space, since Jake oversees all that. And then as part of the bond, we tried to find a win for just about everyone we could. Where the current transportation is, it backs up to a subdivision. So 180 days of the year, at 5:10 in the morning, they're hearing the buses and the diesel engine warm up and pumping the brakes and checking the lights and things like that. So that was part of what we told that subdivision, is that we'd be relocating that as part of our bond effort.
But one of the things that we need to talk about is if we go to electric buses, they don't have the noise factor that the current diesel buses that we've been using for the past 100 years have.
Any other questions? FFLA? Thank you, Siva.
All right, thank you.
Point of order, Mr. President, before we go on.
Yes.
About 5 minutes ago, we received an email from Ms. Catherine Chia saying that there was a public comment, a virtual public comment given that we did not recognize. That that's something that we want to, we have it in writing if we want to read it. Otherwise, we will respond to it after the fact.
I think Beth is saying that she's on right now, so yeah. So yes, we can go back and have that public comment. And then, Howard, if you want to keep time, 3 minutes?
Sure. Well, do we want to be fair, be 5 minutes?
Hi. What
Can you
time?
guys hear me?
Yes, could you hold
Yes.
on just one moment,
Yes,
please? What
we-
time limit do we want to give?
It's up to you guys. Do you want to extend her to 5 minutes as well?
Sure.
We could, yeah. So you have up to 5 minutes for your public comment. So whenever you're ready, you can go.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. My name is Stephanie Howard, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband, and we are parents of 2 Bloomfield students at Way Elementary. And we are against mandatory testing and mandatory masks. We are pro-choice of masks. I don't really understand why it's necessary to test healthy children. I feel like myself and many other parents, these kids have been through so much since March of 2020 and are mentally damaged, including my children, because they've been virtual since March of 2020. I don't believe that any school should ever force or require masks, COVID testing, or COVID vaccines to any child, nor should there be any segregation to any child or teacher, for that matter, based on their own ability to choose what is best for them. Us parents, not politicians or any staff at Bloomfield schools, should be making medical decisions for our children. We know what is best for them. I will not allow my children to be treated in such a way. The schools are supposed to be a place of learning, not a physician's office. We are imploring all agencies to stop any further mandates and to reallocate resources and funding to support the much-needed mental health of our children. The suicide rate is up by 300%, and not to mention the students or children have a 99.99% chance of surviving the virus. So when we hear that the schools are following the recommendations of the health department to ensure the safety of students, I think everyone needs to take into consideration the suicide rates and chances of a child surviving COVID. A recommendation is not a requirement. Now that the teachers and staff are vaccinated per their choice, they should feel safer and not offended if a child is not wearing a mask. Again, our children have been virtually learning since March of 2020, and it's been extremely challenging, and all they want to do is go back to school. The reason we chose virtual was only because of the mask mandate. I believe, and so does my husband, that kids need to be able to breathe fresh air at all times, let alone while in school for 8 hours a day. It doesn't make sense to take the mask off at recess and be around the same kids as they are inside the school building, then only to go back inside the school and put the masks on. Regardless, again, we are pro-mask choice, not mask mandate, and we do plan to send our kids back to school in the fall, maskless. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Stephanie. With that, we will go to Tina for back to 7A, public hearing on adoption of the 2021-22 budget.
Okay, I was asked to test this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay.
Yay. All right, now I'm going to test sharing the screen, although I know Beth is my backup.
We see it.
Perfect. All right, so the public hearing is actually...
Tina, could you go to slideshow, please?
I am, but let me move this over here. I am in slideshow, but it popped it up on my other screen.
And now what you've got is presenter view.
Yeah, uh-huh. Okay, let's try this one. Nope, that's not gonna work. All right, let me, if you don't mind, I'm gonna have to stop sharing.
And that was
And then
fine.
we'll
Was that a
see
All right,
problem?
all right, very good.
Thumbs up.
All right. I mean, Tina, it was fine. I mean, it was big enough. We all have the large screens, so I think it was fine.
Okay. I am going to, this will be the one I think that is the largest because I have 3 screens and the other one is much smaller. Okay, so with that, the public hearing is actually an annual requirement for the following year's budget and required to include the tax rates. We are also required to publish in the newspaper the date of this public hearing, so that was accomplished as well. So starting with the tax rates, you did see these because we had them completed and calculated before the study session a couple of weeks ago. And this includes the 18 mills that is on non-primary residence property, formerly referred to as non-homestead. Primary residence property or homestead property, which we also refer to as hold harmless, is the 6.3028 mills. And then commercial property pays 12 mills, and all classifications for our debt service, which is to pay our bonded principal and interest that the voters approved, is at 2.75. So this is the first year that we're showing this in June for the following year that includes our new bond. The sinking fund is 0.7036. The next slide is a picture of the 21-22 budget. But what I did is I added a slide because there were questions about this year's budget in this column that is landing at a positive revenue exceeding expenditures of 2.7 million. And then next year's budget is almost the exact reverse of that. There's a note at the bottom where this year we received $2 million that is included in the revenue number this year, but the spending of that money is planned for next year and included in the expenditures. So when we look at both of these years combined, and a lot of it has to do with a COVID year and the additional COVID funding and ongoing spending into next year, including the summer programs, when we look at that combined, if that 2 million timing had a better match of the revenue and expenditures, these numbers would be closer to 700,000 and 600,000, closer to a break even. The next graph shows the breakdown of our revenue by source. Most of our revenue does come through locally and through the state, but I like to show this graph that breaks it down into what we talk a lot about, which is the foundation allowance per pupil. That foundation allowance per pupil is determined by the state every year through their budget process. The state's year end is September 30th. So there are years like this year that becomes challenging because the state is still working through their budget process, and we don't know where they're going to land on funding since their year end is September and they have a little bit more time. So we push our legislators to make those decisions as early as possible. I will say there's positive news from the state on the revenue they estimate over the next few years. So we're optimistic something will come through, but for budget purposes, I am realistically conservative. This year, optimistically conservative because of those revenue estimates. And here, 72% of our revenue for next year budgeted is that per pupil funding. And we still say about 12,000 per pupil. It's a little over 12,000. And that breaks down about 50-50 state and local for next year's budget. There are two slides that go through the details of the revenue changes from the revenue this year of about 99 million to next year's revenue, which there is a decrease. And so I'm not going to read to you, but just some of the highlights. Returning to normal, we do expect our local revenue to recover next year, where we were down this year a lot because of being shut down. So preschool and our facility rentals, field rentals, et cetera. So that is a positive for next year. Because of the positive revenue estimates, I mentioned just waiting for the state's decision, but about $200 per pupil in some combination of the foundation per pupil or other categorical sections they may appropriate. I have estimated that, but it is offset by a decline in the full-time equivalent enrollment, which is how we are paid. We're not paid by head count, we're paid by full-time equivalents. Sometimes there's just a little difference there. And the calculation was actually different last year to help districts that experienced the decline, as most did during COVID. So while I am saying there's a decline, it's a decline in how we are going to be funded. But when I look at what the FTEs would have been without that super blend help, we are actually looking at an increase. I have a future slide that has some more detailed notes for anyone that's interested. Public Act 18 is the county tax revenue, and we're looking at a decrease because there was a one-time distribution last year. And then a big one here is the ESSER 2. There are 3 different pots of money from the federal government, and ESSER is the term. I have it spelled out later. And that one-time funding we did receive this year is about $2 million, and that is a portion that the state was able to determine what they wanted to do to allocate their portion of the monies. And that $2 million that we received was part of an equalization where Lansing decided that no district would receive less than $450 a pupil. And we did receive less. We received about 86, so that difference ended up giving us another $2 million this past year. The second slide that completes the changes, a whole list of the federal funding. So ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, and there's an ESSER 1, an ESSER 2, and also an ESSER 3. There's a footnote down here because ESSER 3 has not yet been signed by the governor. It was really close. We expected to have that last week, but it wasn't, so it's not in the budget until it's official. That's something I learned from experience. And all of these other one-time sources of money are currently in the budget and received this year, but they won't be next year. So this total decrease is almost 5% of the revenue change from this year to next year, bringing next year's projection to $94.5 million. This page basically goes through a little bit more detail on the revenue assumptions. I went through line by line, so I didn't plan to go through it in any detail, but there's a little bit more on the super blend and some of the things that I just said in narrative form. All of these slides, by the way, will be going on the website as we typically put a PDF out there for anyone interested. Moving to the expenditure side for next year. On the expenditure side, we show the breakdown, which of course is mostly comprised of staffing. Salaries and benefits comprise about 84% of our general fund expenditures. That's about $81 million of next year's budget. In similar fashion, there are 3 slides that go through and outline the changes from this year to next year. There is just a slight increase in total expenditures, but keep in mind part of next year's expenditures would be that $2 million we will be spending. And the expenditures this year are almost 96.4 at the top of the slide. And staffing, there is a whole list of staffing, both additions as well as reductions that are here. Some of the key things that many have heard about, especially in the board instructional committee and throughout the different board presentations from the learning services team, is some of the supports that will be provided that are budgeted. That includes additional social work support for all sites. The special education redesign plan continues to be implemented with instructional coaches and other positions. More support around elementary literacy and math K-3. I know there were presentations on some of that. And then, of course, we have the summer programming that already kicked off. We have our district nurse, but also a reduction in the director of health and wellness role that we had over most of the past year. On the next slide, from a purchase services standpoint, purchase services includes anything contracted, and it also includes professional development registrations, copier uses, things like that. So during a shutdown, which a lot of last year was, we did have an increase in custodial services, especially as we return to normal. And we expect, while we expect it to be very important to still maintain all that cleanliness, there was just an extreme effort where we expect it to go down by about $200,000. And then returning to normal includes an increase in cost for professional development, such as some of the some will be out of the district. Much of our learning has been virtual. I believe I'm still seeing options to do so, but there will also be more opportunities for in-person learning and networking for different professional development we're seeing coming up. K-12 literacy, there are different plans for kindergarten readiness assessment training, having staff certified. That's actually coming up pretty quickly based on the window in which students will be tested. And then copier usage, because we weren't in the buildings, copier usage was down. We expect that to return to normal. The last item on this slide for transfers out is a reduction of 1.2 million. And that is because this year, a lot of the money we received went towards the necessary tech devices and to allow virtual and remote learning. There was 1.2 million for those of you board members that were here a year ago that you approved to be spent out of the center program reserves, because at that time, we didn't know what our funding would be. And so the center program reserves plan to support whatever the needs are for our students at home. And thankfully, we did receive funding, and part of the board motion indicated if we received funding and this was allowable, that we would offset and not use center reserves. So we received enough funding to be able to offset the full 1.2 million in cost. And then we're also restoring the transfer to the capital equipment fund at this point, and we'll be taking a closer look at that when we look at our capital and facility and tech and equipment needs in the fall. Last slide for changes addresses supply cost. So of course we had a tremendous amount of PPE and other COVID type of supplies, sanitizer, et cetera. So there'll be a decrease there. But returning to normal, we'll see an increase in utilities, gas, electric, water, et cetera, and transportation. Our buses will be running during the year, so the fuel costs will go up, as well as gas, oil, grease, et cetera. We also have items that are aligned, and some of them are on the board agenda this evening, where there are curriculum resource purchases happening around literacy, social studies, psychology, et cetera. And that takes us to a net increase from this year to next year, less than 1%, about 0.75% actually, of 729,000, bringing the total spending to about 97.1. Special revenue funds. In total, our special revenue funds include our center programs, the International Academy, Recreation Community Service, Food Services, Hills Activities, and Co-Curricular Endowment. Now, these special revenue funds in the public board package and for the board, all of the detail by fund is also provided. Summarized here, there's a net positive and an increase to the total projected fund balance. The Board of Education policy is something I like to put up at this time of year because that is one of our guides besides the strategic goals. And I ask that the board look at the policy and also consider what I will continue to show because we use the 15 to 20% fund balance as a percent of expenditures as a guide in this policy. And should any of the long-term forecasts that I will show shortly go below 15%, there is a way for the board to still pass the budget, and you will see that in a moment. So here is the long-term forecast. It's as of a point in time. As soon as more gets appropriated or signed by Lansing and decisions are made, these numbers change, especially for next year, of course, 21-22. So this actually starts with the last audited year, 1920, where our fund balance percent, when we're considering policy, was 22.6%. This year's final budget, which we mentioned pieces of, landed fund balance at 24.5%. But keep in mind, there are $2 million of revenue here with not having the offsetting costs. The costs are actually in next year. And next year, we land at 21.6%. So a little bit below the last audited year before COVID and still above the 20% that is part of the policy. Long term, we do not go to 15% or below. So the board does not have to consider considering that in the policy with the contemporaneous pass of that fund. In the next section, I actually have the slides that we discussed during the last study session, so I didn't plan to go through them, but I thought it would be handy to keep them in the version that will be on the website. So if you don't mind, I will flip through these, and as we go through the different budget versions during the year, more columns are added so we could see the crosswalk from one budget to another. One of the things we did during this year is a special budget amendment in December, given some of the significant changes to the key variables. That's actually something that we here in the finance team believe worked well and are considering doing that again because there is so much we are waiting for from the state as far as decisions on funding as well as appropriating a lot of the federal monies. This section, general fund history and trends, I will spend some time just on a couple of the slides. So here, going all the way back to 2007-8, and for those of you that remember going back to the years of significant economic downturn and property values going down, this is where we were. The red line is expenditures, the blue line is revenue. But one of the things to keep in mind, while it looks like our spending is just at a trend, exorbitant trend upwards, that is also the result of the amounts here noted related to the unfunded actuarial liability in the retirement system that schools are required to participate in. And that amount actually comes in from the state and goes right back out to them. So that inflates every year. It is a true cost. And thankfully we're getting the revenue, but it does grow these numbers. And that is part of this trend line. On this slide for enrollment, we're all actually pleased so far to see the enrollment that's happening with kindergarten on up in the district. And certainly with COVID, all districts have not experienced growth. It's quite the opposite. So I just have some notes here. Like I had mentioned, it appears that we would be going this year from 5511. This is how we were paid, that 12,000 approximately per pupil amount, that we're having a decline, but that's because this number was calculated differently. It was calculated to result in a higher number on purpose. If it was calculated normally, it would have been about 5380. So it would have dipped a little lower, and then it would have been an uptick for next year's projection, which is a conservative projection. I'm hopeful the numbers will actually turn out better than that. But conservative is how we budget. This is another way to show the trend of fund balance. And here, while we go up and down a little bit, I just am pointing out this year is up at 23.6, and then next year goes down to 21. If that $2 million was matched better with revenue and expenditures, it would be more of a flat picture here. Then this slide, I know it's someone's favorite, at least one person. I know it is quite busy, but since Proposal A began, we here in Bloomfield have been monitoring the Consumer Price Index, actually using a much better indicator than we had in the past. For the last few years now, we've been using a state and local government purchases indicator. And in purple, Bloomfield Hills Schools Foundation, back when Proposal A began, was 10,454. And this year, 12,364. Cumulatively, the change is about 18%, where this indicator that we use measuring inflation is 108%. Now, the purpose of Proposal A, and we recently heard the governor talk about the goal of closing the gap. It was really closing the gap between the highest and lowest funded districts, and that has been happening since Proposal A began. And these are the lowest funded districts that had a cumulative 93% increase. And we may see that actually close. But for Bloomfield, the increases, and based on how the formula works, is much lower. So it just provides a bit more challenging, more challenge to us based on those funding changes being smaller than others. And the last page is just providing anyone that wishes to look for more information, some snippets of the web page. But at this point, that concludes the presentation. Should there be any questions?
Any questions? Howard?
Two things. One, I just wanted to footnote a little bit what Tina just said about the prior slide with the difference between the lowest and the highest funded districts. That's the lowest and highest funded districts from state funds, trying to take what's called the minimum and the maximum foundation allowance and bringing that to parity or to equality. That does not include the hold harmless millage. That is separate entirely. So what the governor is talking about is bringing the lowest and the highest funded district from the state, because the hold harmless district is a local millage. That is a different category. Second, Tina, on slide 14, you talked about the special revenue categories. There we go. This year, for the first year, we are operating under the new consortium agreement for the International Academy Central. I must admit I did not look at the backup information, Tina. I apologize. Can you tell us how much within the 300,000 revenue over expenses, what the element is for the IA?
So the International Academy next year's budget, this year's budget had a surplus of almost 250,000. Next year is a spending over revenue of about 67,000. So the fund balance is projected to end in June of 22 at about 254,000.
So at 60,000, it's basically a break even.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments?
Quick question, Tina. On slide 16, with the future projections, is that usually how it looks for 2020, for the future projections as far as in the red, or is that new?
Great question. I'm glad you asked that, John. So yes, this is very typical. It's not comfortable. Some of us have been seeing that year over year. And the reason is, on the revenue side, we are extremely dependent on the state funding. And I will take COVID out of the mix. We're extremely dependent on state funding for revenue. And the revenue estimates from the state go through September of 23. So the first couple of years, especially next year, and the first couple is really what we hone in on internally. And these last couple, they're just not reliable. And conservatively, I don't include much of an increase at all, and sometimes none. So right now, the revenue estimates are positive. So I have 200 here, but only 100 here for purposes of this projection. And then that goes down from there. And then enrollment is very slowly creeping back up to maybe where we were, and not even hitting that. But on the spending side, John, I can say that as long as we don't have a huge enrollment dip or a loss of staff, we plan to staff our classrooms and have the folks in place that we do currently to serve our students. So that is not in. They have small increases in total year over year for that amount of staff, and there aren't reductions planned. Now, right now we are seeing positive revenue estimates from the state, and even then you'll see negatives. We have been through times where we had an unexpected enrollment drop. This was years ago, and that was before the high school opened. And so we had to deal with, I called it budget balancing actions, because sometimes it's expenditure cuts and sometimes it's raising revenue. We have very limited ability to raise revenue, but it could be increasing facility rentals or something like that. So we don't have any significant budget balancing actions planned in any of these years. Where when the numbers are bigger, we're really collaboratively working with administration and cabinet, trying to figure out how we're going to manage it. But the red numbers are normal. The revenue estimates are looking good. And what's really key to us for spending is sustainability. And when we see these jumps, especially when you see a jump from a pre-COVID year here, a big part of that jump is the retirement, and that's not in our control. The retirement just from this year here to the current year that we're in was 1.2 million. The piece that the state gives us the money and then we pay it right back. But that's part of the jump when there's a concern about how much more we're spending. And then we have any retirement increases on the compensation increases factored in, just because right now we're not looking at a freeze. But I will say, over the last several years, for anyone listening, when we had that one surprise year that we came out of, we looked at a long-term projection and we put in a compensation freeze for everyone. And there wasn't something the board was approving. It was saying that if things didn't get better and more funding didn't come from the state, or we didn't come up with other ways to balance the budget, everyone might be looking at a freeze. So there are a lot of different ways to tackle it, and we have to be nimble in a lot of areas, but seeing red and seeing that trajectory is normal.
Thanks, Tina.
Any other questions? Okay.
I do, Paul.
Oh, sorry.
So Tina, looking at 21, 22, and looking at the revenues of 94.5 million, you have excluded potential revenues from ESSER 3 funding, correct?
That is correct. That's about 1.1 million for ESSER 3, the normal ESSER 3 allocation, yes.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Okay. With that, we will go to 8B, report of Board Instructional Committee. Jennifer?
Thank you, Tina. Beautifully thorough, as always. I used to get a stomach ache when I first saw those projections, but somehow it starts to shift as we get closer to time. So hopefully that will still happen. Okay, so I am here to give a brief report on the last Board Instructional Committee meeting, which was on June 7th. The first thing we talked about was that the final extended continuity of learning plan, or ECOL, which we're going to be adopting later tonight, it was due with the state this week. Very much thank you to Learning Services for putting together a wonderful 91-page report that reflects all the different data and struggles and challenges and plans that went into this interesting school year, to put it euphemistically. And we are so ECOL by law will end, right? Is that right? Yeah, it's over. And it's going to, this kind of data collection and reporting is simply going to roll into the MyKIP process, which is the Michigan Continuous Improvement Plan, which is a new infrastructure that the state has put in place for public education to work on continuous improvement. And new to our district, Superintendent Watson has shared with us that the ECOL type reporting will also be turned into an annual academic report that the board will receive. Do you think it'll be still this time of year when we look at those kinds of reports?
I do.
Yeah. We talked briefly about the M-STEP, which took place in April. It was explained to us that the data will not be available till the fall. It is put under what's called embargo, I guess, which I thought was an interesting term. There are actually parts of the test that are hand-graded, so it takes time for that to happen. We went over the FastBridge data briefly. FastBridge is not the state standardized testing. It is a tool that Bloomfield has adopted for formative assessments, real-time sort of micro evaluations of student progress that the teachers can use to adapt their plans in real time. So our preliminary, or not preliminary, our snapshot from this year, 2020, 2021, shows that 84% in, I may get this backwards, math, and 80% for ELA were performing at or above grade level and showed much growth. So that meets our target of not losing ground during the pandemic. And I'll add that FastBridge is applicable to grades 1 through 8. It does not apply to the high school population, whereas M-STEP still is taken by 11th graders. We also got some brief information about Fontes and Pinnell, which is a reading assessment. I believe that is K-5 that evaluation applies to. And so we were told that 70 to 80% of our students are on track for elementary reading, and that the FastBridge data is correlating with the Fontes and Pinnell data. So that's kind of a good internal reality check that these test instruments are doing what they're supposed to do. So that was the first big chunk that we talked about. Then we moved on to preliminary discussion about preschool plans and the options that we have going forward to handle our preschool program. Inside of the greater bond timeline, the preschool program change, the preschool implementation changes, site, number of students, choice offerings, that would not change until the fall of 2025. So I guess that's sort of phase 2 of the bond work. Barton Mallow shared with us that whichever site the preschool is placed at, that the development of that site, whatever construction, addition, furniture, refurbishing has to go into making preschool classrooms, that will be cost neutral, whichever site that we choose. So that was nice to hear that variable get taken out of the equation. And then we just talked about the fact that we need to do some more homework. We need to think about demographic considerations for that age cohort going forward. We need to think about long-term sustainability costs at the different building sites, and the other ramifications of having a preschool at any individual site, what that would mean for other students in that building. And so we're going to be talking about this going forward at other study sessions. And then the last thing that we did at BIC was we talked about new curricular resources. So I'm not going to say too much about that because it's board business 9I and 9J tonight. But basically, it has been recommended to adopt a new AP psychology resource and 2 new books for ELA in 2 different high school English courses that will be course-wide reading, course-wide resources. So that is it for Board Instructional Committee. Any questions? Lisa?
My first question is, when does the board have to make a decision about where the preschools will be located?
In order for construction to go forward on schedule, I believe we have to have a site decision by the end of August. Is that correct?
End of August, early September.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And we can have Paul clarify when it comes up as well.
When does the board have to make a decision about what kind of virtual programming we're offering in the fall? Was that discussed?
We did not discuss virtual programming.
Okay.
Yeah. But if Todd's here or Superintendent Watson.
There's really not a vote needed on virtual programming. So we'll have, for example, at the high school, they'll be able to take classes, whether it's Michigan Virtual or what we're offering for BHS. Bloomfield Virtual will exist K through 5. We're still waiting to see what those final numbers are going to be like, but there's nothing we're going to bring forward that's going to need approval.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but will Bloomfield Virtual for K through 5 is happening regardless of what the numbers come back at?
Well, a virtual opportunity, right? So if we have one kindergarten student, it would be great to have one teacher with one kindergarten student, but we have to get the final numbers, and then we can share what the virtual options are. There will be a virtual option for K through 5 students.
But it may not be a virtual academy for K through 5.
Correct. It could be a split class of first and second graders. It could be an opportunity for third-party vendor, but there will be a virtual opportunity.
All right. So,
Until we know
that's,
the
I guess, what I was
numbers, we
getting at.
won't know what exactly it's going to
Yeah.
be, but we'd like to keep it, Bloomfield virtual. But again, if there's one kindergarten student, we're not going to staff it with one person, but there will still be a virtual option for that student.
All right, so I just wanted to know if we were open to outsourcing, and if the numbers are low, it sounds like we are, so, okay. That's all the questions.
Any other questions? Okay, 8C.
Okay. So this is now per our vote, per our informal vote. While we get board operating procedures and policy coordinated, going to be a standard board regular meeting agenda item. So because it's a two-step process, there's no board action required tonight. I'm going to pass this printed sheet out. I didn't print the policy out because it's long and I didn't want to waste paper. We can all access it online, or you can look at it between this month and next month when we actually have to vote on it. These are the recommendations that I'm making based on the inconsistencies in the BOP as we've just decided and what the policy, our current policy says. So for example, general change, our board operating procedures, or BOP, they're referred to in our policy right now as bylaws. They're the same thing, but I'm requesting a change. Incidentally, I should have added it, but didn't. We refer to ancillary organizations, PTO and boosters. In our policy, they are called partner organizations. So for consistency's sake, I'm happy to change either the BOP or the bylaws, or the policy, but they should be consistent with what we're referencing. Board committees, this one I debated about whether to throw on now, but because it's a two-step process and because by our next meeting we will have more clarity on the issue, if we go to a committee of a whole to be consistent with the BOP, then board committees would likely consist of a mix of board members and administration. So to be consistent with the language of the BOP, I simply added, instead of appointed by the president, like it says in the policy, already our BOP says appointed by the president upon agreement with the board member assigned. So that there's an effort made to put the board member on the committee that the board member requests. And that's done already in practice. So just to make that consistent, I added and approval of the superintendent. Of course, that is kind of pending what happens with the committee decisions that we're making, which are upcoming, but I wanted to put it out there so that when we do put these changes in, they can all, we've met step one in the process. Under the section of the policy that deals, these are all section 1000, by the way. Under the section dealing with elections, I removed a sentence that referred to the board officer nomination committee because we don't use that anymore. And in section 2002, there's a reference to the first sentence of the section references the core function of the school district. I think pending the outcome of what we decide on in our vision and mission statement, we should make sure it's accurate. Right now, it reads, it is to educate students and prepare them to become productive and responsible citizens and adults. All other policies and objectives are secondary to this objective. That's how our policy reads currently. Maybe it's okay, maybe it won't be. I think it's really depending on what we decide. I just tried to do a general sweep of this and pull anything that might be relevant that might need to change. And lastly, also not on the list, but we spoke briefly on Tuesday about amending, rescinding, overriding policy. And currently, it's a majority of the board, but the sort of safe step is that it's a two-step process. So there's a presentation of the issues, and then there cannot be a vote to change until the following regular meeting. So the alternative, which we can discuss if we want to, is changing it to a supermajority of the board. So instead of 4 board members, you would need 5. I'm comfortable with the two-step process that we have, leaving it. I'm also fine if we want to change it. I'm not sure when it was mentioned to us on Tuesday that it was unusual if that two-step process was considered. It's up to us to decide anyway. I'm just putting it out there for something for us to think about in the next month. Lastly, there is an issue that does require attention. We can't vote on it tonight, but I'm bringing it up because it's one of those ASAP things. To give really brief background, because I know we've got a pretty packed agenda, at the end of 2021, we lose the township. Let me take it one step back. During COVID, we have the ability to have virtual or hybrid meetings. Was granted by an executive order, and later from a Michigan Department of Health and Human Services order. Anyway, that ended. Our township extended it, which they can do, through the end of 2021, which is how we're still able to meet hybrid. And by the way, I want to just qualify, this refers to board members only, because this is part of the Open Meeting Act. So staff members can always join virtually or hybrid at the discretion of the superintendent. This is really just regulates us as a board. So the other thing that takes effect in 2022 is that there are less mandatory reasons for an individual board member to remotely participate. There were 3 or 4 different reasons that you could participate remotely before. Now it's reduced to 1 mandatory reason. But the flexibility comes in. There is the allowance for board members to decide in their policy if they want to extend that. So we can't have remote or hybrid meetings. We can't choose as a board to do that in 2022. But we can choose to allow 1, 2, or up to 3 board members to remotely participate if we choose to. We set the conditions. Someone's sick, someone is at work late, or they just want to, it's more convenient. We decide. We also decide whether that person who is participating remotely will have voting rights. So those are 2 things we have to decide on. We have a recommendation from IT. In order to have this hybrid meeting, at least at the time being, because of the technological capabilities of the Doyle Center, it's going to be expensive. There is slated improvements to technology in phase 2 of the bond, which is a couple years away. So it's our decision, and they should know now, because if we intend to do this, this should be stepped up to bond phase 1, and there's tech that needs to be ordered quickly. So we do not have to decide it. I'm wondering, though, if we can give them a heads up whether there's some things that need to be ordered like yesterday, if this is something that we intend to continue through the 2022 and further. My personal opinion on this is that we keep it in phase 2 where it is, and require in-person board participation, and revisit it when we have the upgrade, when there is no cost. I can't justify the cost and an IT time expense to do this for the next couple of years. When the upgrade occurs, I think it's definitely something that we can talk about, and we can do it now. It's still up to us to decide. For the sake of IT, I'm wondering if we can just sort of get a pulse on where everybody is in their opinion on this. Is this the kind of thing that we think we're going to want to do in the next couple of years? And if so, perhaps IT can start at least costing out what they're going to need to be able to make the Doyle Center technologically, equipped to be able to do this. Anyone have an opinion on it?
I just have one quick thought, not going into all this detail because it can get obviously very complex. Could we have a zero-cost option, which is if someone is remote, that we just put them on a speakerphone? We've done that before, I think, with Jackie.
So right now, the OMA reads that there has to be two-way visual communication.
Oh, it has to be visual.
It says that. So I don't, but Jackie, I thought maybe it was from an iPad, because I think we did see her. So maybe there's
Okay.
was a way.
She just zoomed into the meeting.
He zoomed in?
Okay.
She did.
Okay.
I don't really know. That's a question
Because
for.
another thought, I
yeah.
mean, there are so many different variations on how we could do this. The other thing is, we could have that person participate, but just not vote.
We could.
So that they're listening, they're hearing, they can comment, but it's still just a quorum of 6 people.
That's what we did with Jackie before COVID.
Yeah, so there are lots of ways to skin the cat.
Right. So that's something that has to go in policy. I do think if we think this is going to be something that might occur regularly, that what we're hearing from IT, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I read this the wrong way, we all have received the same analysis, is really that it's not going to be cost neutral. That's what I read.
I read it was going to cost to accelerate it up, 50,000 to
Yeah,
100,000.
50 to
To accelerate, or is it, let's say, $100,000 in 2 years or $100,000 now? It's not in phase 1, it's in phase 2, or series 2. And all we're doing is we're moving the dollars from series 2 to series 1.
No, I read it differently, Howard, not to cut you off. I read an additional 50 to 100 to move it from phase 2 to phase 1.
Is it, Tina, or is it incremental, or is it just a retiming?
Because the upgrades are more than 50 to 100,000 that are slated for Doyle, much more.
I guess
All
that.
right, David's on, so if we're
sorry.
looking for some clarification, you might be able to help.
The man.
I do not
Yeah,
know
I'm
the
way
answer.
over my head on this.
I guess
Sorry,
the-
Dave.
The
Well,
question,
literally, he's over your head.
You can hear me, first of all. Let's start with that.
Yes, you can.
I am sweating tonight because it's one of those things with lights going off and all kinds of things. So to clarify, it is not that 50 to 100,000 would be the normal cost we anticipate for refresh. It's not to accelerate it. Does that make sense? So what we're saying is typically that whole room in general is around $300,000. I'm just giving you the last time we refreshed it. We have at least $100,000 of refresh to solve some of these problems. There's additional cost to refresh, but that could be held off. Does that make sense? I'm trying to delineate. I think to solve the challenges that we're experiencing is that 50 to 100, whether we do it now or in about 3 years.
Oh, it
2
is.
years. Yeah.
So the total
it's
cost.
not to accelerate it.
The
Yeah.
total cost of the bond is the same, it's just whether we do it now, or you pay me now or you pay me later, but the cost for the total bond period is the same.
Correct.
It's just a
And
timing thing.
understand, though, the overall refresh of the whole room would be about 350. Just to,
Right.
Is that in, and that's in, is the 300 in the bond?
That is correct.
Okay.
so the question, right, so the question is, to accelerate this is over the next 2 years or whenever you're planning on doing this, before acceleration, taking time out to do it now, is if, we all have our schedule for the year, like board meetings, it's in our calendar. If things pop up and someone, let's say I, for instance, have to go on a trip to, whatever, Texas or wherever I am, and as a board meeting, I would have the option of virtually zooming in and having all access as if, when we had COVID, or I would probably have to skip the meeting, so it's, that would be, that's what we're kind of deciding upon,
We've
if
done
we
it,
have
as I said, we did it with Jackie without all the incremental cost.
Yeah,
Or
well,
not incremental, without the timing
I
change.
guess she zoomed in
Yeah.
and she just kind of looked and listened and just didn't vote.
She was up there.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
She was,
So-
we had a visual,
Okay.
two-way visual.
Yeah.
It can be done.
David, when do we have to let you know in order to, so this sort of kicks into effect January 1st of 2022. When do we have to let you know what our decision is?
Yeah, well, obviously sooner than later, and the supply chain is a challenge, and that is a realistic risk around any of this stuff. But probably the key thing you need to take away here is because of the cost, we're going to need to bid it. So we're going to have to design, spec, and then bid, and that's going to be a month to 2 month process, even if we fast track it tomorrow. So we just have to be conscious of that. Just think about it. Whenever we would come for approval, then it would get ordered, and then it might still be another couple months. So that's just kind of that timeline.
Lisa, if I could just make a request, I mean, David did a whole write-up, which I have not had a chance to read through. Can we maybe make this decision at the next board meeting, and between now and then, we read that description and try to figure out whether we need to bother to accelerate or whether we just kind of tread water for a few years?
All right, so I did read his write-up, and, you know, responded back and forth via email. So, I mean, I don't think it's time is of the essence. If we don't do it vote at the next meeting, we're not going to have it in time, and we need a specific date. I don't think that.
It's sort of, if we can do what Paul just said, and we do a Jackie, it ain't broke. Why do we need to, at this point, do an accelerated fix? We'll just wait for the bond timing. If we can sort of figure it out.
It's like anything else. It's a decision. What I'm hearing from David, you know, it would take time away from what, I don't want to speak for you, David, so, but, you know, maybe it's going to take time away from other things that they're going to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Do we as a board want that convenience earlier or wait 2-3 years from now?
The Zoom, Howard, is not an option, what Jackie did, because it's not, we don't use that platform anymore because it's not secure. So the one recommendation that we did get was that we stick with WebEx and not go back to Zoom.
Wait, so that, and again, I haven't read the write-up, but you're saying that the Jackie option is not available?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
We don't want to go back to Zoom now because
we're
there's
using
too
Zoom
many.
as really
Yeah,
Zoom,
it's
not
not a secure.
euphemistic
It's not
Zoom.
secure for us.
Why can't someone get thrown up on WebEx? What's the difference? Security. Why can't
I
you do it
don't.
the same way?
This is so over my head. I don't know.
Yeah, David, is it possible, I guess a question we could ask, is it possible without vote, you know, without you doing anything for us, if I'm in Texas, and I don't know why I threw out Texas, but if I'm in Texas, can I somehow get into the meeting, listen, maybe I'm not allowed to, you know, maybe there's not enough technology for me to vote two-way, but is that possible to do with minimal disruption to you and your team?
So you're asking me that, Paul, correct? I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct, yeah.
So to answer just in brief, yes, we could do that. I think the challenges that we experienced, say like last week with Michelle and Michelle, they could hear each other beautifully. We could not hear them at all, and it disrupted the meeting. And those are the things that we're trying to fix and make it more reliable. But to answer your question, yes, most likely you could, and right now it's working. So, you know, to a certain extent, we're doing okay. We just know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done just to do this right here.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing.
And pre-COVID, the answer would be if something happened, personal work that was beyond control, we would just miss the meeting. You know, okay.
All right. So, thank you very much. I would never been able to answer those last couple questions. What I'm sensing from Howard and from Paul, and you know my opinion, is that I am comfortable, because we did operate like this pre-COVID, sort of deferring and deflecting this until it does come up in the natural course of things. I don't really want to pull IT from something student-related to have to deal with this. So unless anyone or many of us feel differently, I'm comfortable just, you know, revisiting this years down the road and calling this kind of resolved.
It sounds like from what David says, you know, agreed. Leave in 2 years from now, or whenever it is, and if we need to use that feature, we might have to adjust our policy for the things you said. But on the technical side, if Paul's in Texas, we ahead of time talk to David, try to make it work, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
All right. That's a good point,
Paul?
Howard. Yeah, that's a really good point.
So it sounds like the reliability's not there, so therefore we're willing for 2 years to go with, you know, kind of hit or miss, and hopefully it works. And then in 2 years, it'll be 100% there.
Right. And if somebody wanted to try out something and hope for the best, you know.
And if it doesn't work?
It's not in our policy, so we right now can't do that.
Well, and that's why I'm saying we might need a policy change to
Right. So
permit the legality of it. There's a technical piece and the legal
Yeah, if
piece.
somebody knew they weren't going to be at a meeting, they would have to give us a couple months' notice because of the two-step approval process to change policy.
Well, no, and that's silly.
Well, should I put it in now then? That's my question.
In terms of the OMA, all right, so you got the
The
OMA
OMA.
piece and the legal piece. I'm sorry, the OMA piece and the technical piece. Sounds like the technical piece is we kick it for 2 years. On the OMA piece, I think we should incorporate it into OMA, giving us that flexibility,
All right.
I think.
This is not now of the essence, so I'll see if I can craft something that is worded something like, provided that technology supports, we will allow. Okay. So what I'm hearing is participation, provided it's technologically not disruptive and not, you know, what about voting? Do we want to allow remote voting?
Do we have a choice, or is it, okay?
I'd say yes. I mean, just, you know, MASB is trying to do 100% virtual, but unfortunately, the legislature doesn't allow it yet.
Okay.
So therefore, and I think the rule right now is as long as you have a quorum, you're okay, and that's why it's 1, 2, or 3. Once you go to 4 people, then it
You
violates...
have to have a quorum in person because you
Exactly.
can't have a virtual meeting.
Exactly.
Correct.
So that as
Yeah.
long as the legislature gives us 4 or more, if on the 1, 2, or 3 people, why not give ourselves the flexibility?
Okay. And actually, you know, if I'm weighing in on it, yeah, I would agree. If you're going to participate remotely or virtually, then I think that you should be able to vote.
As I said, MASB is trying to get it so that all 7 could be remote, but
Right.
the legislature is not allowed
Does
that.
anyone have feelings about that? And I think I know how to word it. I'll run it by us. Obviously, we have no action to take tonight on it, so I have a month to craft something that,
You can run it by Kevin or something like that.
Yeah.
or
okay.
Brad.
I have an unrelated question about the notes. I'm sorry, are we done with
Yeah,
tech
I'm done with
meetings?
I'm done
Okay.
with
Everyone else
all
okay
of
with
the,
that? I mean, we can-
yeah, I'm not.
So as I understand it, right now, the word bylaw is synonymous with the word policy. And it always was weird to me that in the policy, in any document, it'll say policy and bylaws, which is really the same thing. So Lisa, are you proposing then to just change the definition of the word bylaws?
All right, so throughout the policy, it refers to board bylaws. What we are calling bylaws in our policy is our board operating procedure. I'm suggesting renaming it in the board policy.
Yeah, and take out the word bylaws.
Yes, correct.
I mean, we can maybe talk to the lawyers about that. In general, you have constitution bylaws, and for us, you have the policy. The bylaw portion is the board rules about, or guidelines in terms of what is a quorum and it's sort of the structure of what we do here. The policies are all the other things, community relations and curriculum and all the other sections of the policy, but the subset of the board piece of it, elections and things like that, are usually called
that's the
bylaws.
1000
Now,
section.
whether we can morph that into calling that subsection 100% BOP, I don't know. That's, talk to Kevin.
Well, actually, bylaws are referred to throughout, and it referenced,
Yeah, 'cause
it is, and it references bylaws to things that are not the 1000 section, assuming
the
we
one-
have another freestanding document, which we do, but it's called the BOP. So all I want to do is change it so we are calling,
as long as
Doesn't listen.
Kevin's okay with it, I'm fine. Whatever he says.
okay, and
My
in that,
question, can I
sorry.
did have a question.
Michelle.
I keep raising my hand.
I'm sorry.
Maybe I shouldn't be on this island by myself. So I was going to ask the question, if we could see maybe like the page references where the changes would be. I was trying to go through and see like what we're changing what to, so we can make sure it really makes sense to change it to that language.
Yeah, I'm
Especially-
going to have that to you. And I apologize. After about an hour and a half of trying to format a PDF into a Google form and having to reset margins, I did give up. I apologize.
You're
But
completely
before
fine.
you actually have to vote on it, I'll make sure that that's
Because I'll go through
That
too
that
and
was my
look
goal.
and make references to. And then my second question is, was this here before? And should we be signing this at one point in time? I don't remember the signature page.
This one right here that I just
Oh, no,
circulated.
I'm so sorry. On the very last page of the
Last
BOP,
page of the BOP.
there's an acknowledgement of the document review.
All right, so what we decided to do, interesting that you asked that, what we decided to do is create a one-page checklist of all the documents that need our signature, and we can check them and sign one time at the bottom that we've read them and we understand them, and then those will be housed in a shared file for us to
So we don't have to
review.
check, we don't have to sign
We don't have it yet.
individual
Rebecca's going to
documents.
organize that for us.
Okay, I
Thank you,
remember that,
Rebecca.
but it was a signature page, and I wanted to see, did I need to sign something?
It is going to be on a, yeah, it'll be a signature page for all of us to do.
Thank you.
All right, so the second part of this category, I'm going to move as quickly as I can, I apologize, I know it's a long agenda, is set up for conflict resolution, which we also discussed at our last meeting. I'm really hoping that this is an opportunity for us to have an open dialogue where we learn from our mistakes and, I mean, I'll start by saying if we had had this when I started, there could be 10 to 15 mistakes directed at me at every single meeting. So I don't want this to be seen as a gripe session or punitive or calling people out. It's just an opportunity to make, number one, the BOP more effective for us, make sure that it's being put into practice, and really judgment-free, but just with the overall objective of making this a document that we use, and it doesn't just collect dust. So I don't know how to put it. I guess I'll introduce it monthly, and if we have something, we do. If we don't, we don't. And I don't know that we need to say in advance, or if it's just something that people had a question about or wondered about. I have one that I was going to bring up. Does anyone have any, I guess conflict resolution may be a little bit too specific, and I can work and we can decide on maybe calling it something different. Conflict resolution in my mind was, I had an issue, I brought it up with the other board member or president, and it wasn't resolved, so I'm bringing it here because this is the place to discuss it. So, you know, my objective, I guess, as a board member would just be sort of to collect things that didn't make sense, or I didn't feel like I really were resolved satisfactorily. So the one that I have, we started talking about a little bit, but it was in one of our BOP sessions, drafting sessions, and it was about volunteer roles. And we discussed that we would be volunteers, grunts, members, but not take advisory or decision-making roles on what we're now going to be calling partner organizations to the district. So PTOs and boosters and districts that we refer to as ancillary. Over the course of the last couple years and last couple months, there is some issue with Facebook administrative status. We did talk about it, but we didn't come to resolution. I brought it to the board members' attention, then to the president's attention. The issue being sometimes posting as an administrator, there are innocent mistakes made with the best intentions, but I don't know how to do this without calling up some examples, and I really don't want to sound accusatory when I do it, because I am beyond grateful to have board members that attend things and make videos and take pictures and post. But as an administrator, I think with administrative status on PTO Facebook pages, I think it opens the district up to some liability, and I've been hearing that it's causing some angst to administration to try and fix. For example, some of the mistakes, posting pictures of students whose pictures and or names weren't authorized to be released in the media. Posting wording that might be offensive to some. Misspellings, things that maybe don't reflect well on a school district, things that need editing. My suggestion would be to have anyone who is attending events, making videos, taking pictures, to send it to that page's administrator first. It's another set of eyes to look at a post or a document or a picture or a video. It's help editing, which I always, ask someone, another set of eyes to look at stuff that I draft, just to make sure there are no typos or spelling, whatever. And it does separate the district from liability if there's something like a picture of a student posted that shouldn't be, because it came through an administrator that's not a board member. So that's the standstill. We have to decide as a board whether we want to allow this to continue. Michelle?
So are we proposing a conflict resolution time on the agenda, or like?
I mean, that's sort of what now is.
Is that what you're saying? Okay. I'm just trying to make sure I'm keeping up.
Yeah. So, I'm going to throw it to Paul, because this is a discussion we've had. I addressed it with Paul, who doesn't think there's anything wrong with remaining a Facebook administrator on a few of the PTO pages.
And then who would be facilitating the resolution?
Well, we vote as a
group. Okay.
as a group of seven.
Just want to make sure it's like, how is this going to work?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's pointed toward me, right? I go to events, and in order to not burden administrators, the only thing I do is I post pictures. I do check with, I've done it at the high school, I've checked with all the elementary and middle schools to make sure the pictures are fine for release. I go into the offices. So that's part of the process. I put up pictures to show recognitions of our students. And to be honest, the administrators, especially at the high school, appreciate the fact that I'm not burdening them with reviewing everything, and I put it up, and it hasn't ever been brought to my attention as a problem over the last 5 years that I've been doing it.
All right. Can I clarify what you just said, though? It's never been brought to your attention by anybody that you posted a picture that shouldn't be posted, that you posted something that might be interpreted as offensive, by anybody.
And if it does, for instance, if something's offensive, I'm happy to take it down or change the wording or take down a picture. I'm open to, feedback. I'm open to growth. I do it for the convenience, of the administrator there, and I do it for the benefit of the district. I don't think I'm putting the district at liability.
Right. Well, okay, let me say, I want you to continue doing it. I'm really grateful that you do. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. I really hope that practice continues, because, I love seeing pictures as well. I can't attend all the events, and I love seeing the videos and the pictures. All I'm suggesting is a middle ground, so that it goes through somebody else on the district sites. On your personal site, it's yours to do with what you choose. But I'll tell you, I have directed them all to administration if they come to me. There are several complaints that come in.
So go ahead.
So these are on the PTO sites. The PTOs are separate organizations from the district.
No.
The PTOs report to Pat?
They're called partner organizations under our policy. and they are not separate.
They-
I just went through that. We called them affiliated, but the policy calls them partner.
But legally,
Yeah.
I guess.
It's a 501c3.
No, they're not 501c3s. Only one is.
Okay, so but they're not part of Bloomfield Hills
But they
School.
use, it's interesting that you say that, because they use our 501c3 number,
Okay,
so they are affiliated, Howard.
okay.
And I know the administrators of the sites appreciate it and have never, I mean, if they wanted me to, I'd more than happy to go through them. They actually have told me they appreciated the fact that I'm not.
Here's another thing then. Should we, before we make a decision on this, have we consulted the administrators of these sites? Have they, maybe they should come and speak? Because what you're saying is to have them as part of the administrators, maybe there are, how many administrators are there?
It's like probably two a site.
Two a site?
Two or
Okay.
three a
So
site.
including, and then with you, that would be a third.
That would be a
Yeah.
third.
All right, so why don't we get those two per site to come in or give us a document to say whether they would like Paul to be there or not?
All right,
Because it is not up to the board to tell the PTOs how they should be running their sites.
No, we're not, but we're telling another board member, we're restricting, that's the whole point of the BOP, one of, is to regulate board behavior, how we operate as a board. So this is definitely under the umbrella of what we're supposed to do. And my concern is not, do I think it might add extra work for the administrators of these Facebook pages? Maybe a little bit. I don't know what's involved in taking something, looking at it, and posting it. I don't know how many there are. I don't know how much work is involved. I really don't. I do know on the district end, there are multiple complaints.
But
And
that's-
so my concern is to protect
Has
the
there
district.
been multiple complaints?
So I'll chime in on a couple things. First and foremost, I don't have Facebook, so I don't know a lot of these things you're talking about. If there have been any concerns about something being posted, it has been taken down. And I also know a lot of parents are really appreciative of the videos and things that come out and have asked me to thank Paul at graduation about the videos.
Absolutely, and
Which I
I
know
thank
you
him
said you
too. Yeah,
appreciated the
yeah.
videos as well.
Yeah, I do. I love that. I love watching the videos. I don't want it to stop. I'm not suggesting that at all. I just want to make that clear again. It's not the practice that I object to. I am grateful for it. We were extremely lucky to have a board member that does this. I mean, really lucky. I hope it doesn't stop.
How's this as a compromise? For all these sites, Lisa, you're the one who's making these issues or bringing them to our attention. Maybe you should be as an administrator on these sites, and you can review everything that Paul puts up.
I do not want that.
But the administrator sounds like, according to Paul, that they don't want it either.
I don't know what they do when other people send them stuff. They vet it, they look at it, they post it.
Yeah.
I don't know what's different about Paul, why
Well, that's-
Paul
why don't we
or any board member
But why don't
should
we
have
ask? Why don't
administrative
we ask them?
status.
Why don't we ask them?
Because this is a board decision regarding liability to the district and potential issues that might arise from
So,
it.
but the superintendent just said there isn't a liability to the
Maybe
district.
liability is not the only issue.
Okay.
I didn't use the word liability.
No, I know that.
Just to
No.
clarify, I did not.
No, my
You said that
concern,
there wasn't a concern
my
for the
concern is multiple. Some of it is liability-based. Some of it is inappropriate-based, maybe it's up for an hour and only one person sees it, but it's hurt feelings. I can give you an example. We don't use the term graduation for anything but high school for a reason, because there are students who don't advance. And we're from a DEI perspective, we're very careful and intentional to remove the word graduation. We don't use it for that reason. Now, when someone says all students graduated, somebody whose student may not have graduated, that's one person seeing, that's enough. I don't want that.
So the
for them.
term was used, I went to the East Hills, West Hills, BHMS ceremonies, and I posted pictures and videos of the celebrations, and I said, congratulations to our 8th grade graduates moving on to the high school. And it was brought to my attention from Jennifer, and so I changed the wording, and that was that.
Right. But it was brought to Jennifer's attention because somebody read it and was hurt by it.
that wasn't brought, again, it was,
Do we have a set of rules in terms of, maybe from Karen, in terms of the right language and the incorrect language to be using?
This is not the first time. There's a long
no,
list of
so
things that happen. This is the latest
But
example
I'm
I
saying,
gave
is
you.
there is there a list of do's and don'ts?
There is not an all-inclusive list that could,
Is there any,
I mean-
if there is something, we could
So,
provide Paul the list of
if
do's
I'm
and
at John's
don'ts.
soccer game, I'm going to have a list of things, I mean, they're just really, in different things, different things to
But
different
how's the
people.
editor, if we got the administrator going to edit this, they have to have a rule book too to know what is appropriate and what is not appropriate to
I
post.
think, and to be, I'm sure if I would have put that up with that wording, I'm sure the administrator would have posted it that way. So I don't, I don't think anyone, when it was brought to my attention, of course, if it was offensive to one person, I changed the wording immediately. And that's what I'll continue to do.
Right, and all I'm suggesting is that if it's offensive and if there's a picture that shouldn't be posted, you now represent the district, so you're exposing the district. For example, if it's a forensic student who has a personal protection order against a non-custodial parent, and you posted a picture of this child, now the non-custodial parent knows where to find them, knows a extracurricular activity where they may be without the other parent, and may now approach this. That's an enormous exposure of liability to the district and danger to the child. I believe that would be caught by an administrator of a site. If it's not, at least it's a personal administrator. It's not exposing us, the board and district to it.
Mr. President, I'd like to either hear from the other board members or call the question.
Is there a way we can, this is not the first time we've had this conversation. So, this has been 20 minutes going. Could you, Paul, I love your post. Could we just do a trial basis and maybe just send the pictures to the administrator? I don't really know. Just seems like it keeps coming back up.
I love his post too, by the way. I can't say that enough. I really do.
I want you to, Paul says, you attend every event. Paul goes to every.
I know.
So,
This is,
so
to Pat's point, right? The parents love it, right? I don't, and it's a lot, right? It's, like in the high school alone, it can be, it can be 100. I don't want to burden someone to look, analyze, I'm just saying, and then post, and then prohibit the community from seeing the recognition. That's what, if it was as simple as, someone can do as quickly and put it up, as I, and the same impact, as Pat said, Pat gave me graduation, it makes an impact on the community. And the reason why I'm not as simple as say do that, because I think this may take away from the impact. I think this does 100,000% more good than harm. So,
But no one's suggesting it stop.
and
It's
so,
one
but
extra
the-
step, that's all.
But if Pat came to my, if Pat or the district or a principal came to me and said, listen, your posts the last 4 weeks have been putting the district in a severe liability at risk. You need to go through this, I would, but no one has come to me and said that.
All right.
Is it, I'm not sure how Facebook works with the PTO pages and the groups and things like that, but, isn't it, as a compromise, wouldn't it be possible for you to just post the pictures on your page and then send a message to the PTO administrator saying, I've made this post, you can share it? I'm not, if it's not possible, I don't know, I don't really want to have this conversation for more than another couple of minutes, to be honest, but if that's possible, I don't know. If it's not, I'll leave it up to the board to take a vote on it at some point, but I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you make a post, someone can share your post. And then you could just send them a message, hey, I made a post about the bowling tournament or whatever. Would you like to share it to the PTO page for the wherever the high school or whoever has bowling. I don't know. I really don't want to continue this conversation with more important things on the agenda at 8 o'clock, so. Is that possible? Or we can't, what do we?
Listen, again, I just, what's the energy? I think we're looking for, I don't know, a problem where there's not, whatever that meeting is.
But that's the thing, there are problems. There are. There's pictures of posted without masks during time when everyone should have been wearing masks that got pulled down, but this happens a lot. And Karen catches a lot of it, and we can't post it because this, we can't post it because, nobody doesn't want it posted. They just want to make sure that we take out anything that might offend somebody and edit so that there's not typos and misspelled words. But it's not going to reduce the number of posts, the number of events you go to. I really love what you're doing, and I can't thank you enough for doing it. I really can't. I just think if we have one extra step, which honestly I don't see as that, especially because most of these PTO pages have more than one administrator, so they can maybe split the duty and divide up your posts to edit. I don't know, but it would make me feel a lot more comfortable if I knew we weren't attaching the district and board to stuff that was seen as offensive.
Again, it's up to all of you.
All right. So we haven't really formally done this before, and everyone chime in. I do want this to be done so we can move along with the agenda as well. But it seems as if it's up to us to decide whether Paul relinquishes administrator status and just either posts on his individual page and tells the administrators to share, or sends the videos to them to post, one of those two.
I think it's the same, though. If he posts to his own page, what's the difference if he posts? If it's still incorrect, it's still not correct. So I'm not really sure if that really is a resolution. I mean, if he posts graduation for 8th grade, it's still incorrect, right? So if it's on his personal page, it's still not correct, and he's still a board member, he's still president.
Someone would bring it to my attention.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my preference, would really be to send it to somebody in between and have it, if it involves district events and district students, have somebody look at it first, just to have another set of eyes on it.
I don't know, this is.
All right. I mean, I want to be done with this section, so maybe I'll call for the vote, I guess. Anybody in favor of?
You have to make a motion, and it has to be seconded.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot it's not informal. Okay. I move to direct all board members who are administrators of, what are we calling it? District partner organization social media pages to relinquish their administrator status. Does anyone second that? Okay. So I guess it continues. All right.
General discussion. D, National School Board.
Before we go on the list of changes to the policy, one of the parking lot items that we had was a discussion of how to handle the foundation and the board appointees to the foundation, which is currently, I think, in conflict between the policy and our BOP. So would it be possible to add that as a to-do on your changes?
Well, we had asked, this is where we left it. We asked the two board members that were currently on the foundation board, because right now, that's how it stands,
Right.
to see if the president of the foundation would come speak to us. That's what we were waiting to hear, so we could have a dialogue
Okay,
and
so
ask
what is
questions.
the current status of
I
that?
don't know what the status of that is.
So, yeah, I don't recall that we've actually asked, it has been mentioned, though.
We brought up something, but just tell us what you need.
Yeah,
us to ask
no,
her to do.
we'll ask her. She expressed, we brought this up to her right at the beginning of the school year, and she was very explicit that she did not see a conflict of interest, that she wants common sense to prevail, and she wants board members to remain voting members of the foundation board. That was her comment at the time.
Yeah, that's it. It's whether or not we should be voting members or not. and we have
Okay,
to ask
so if
Mary.
that's the case.
No, we are
We are,
voting
yeah.
members,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if that's the case, then we would have to put into the BOP that the foundation is an exception to our BOP
Now, the
rules.
next foundation president might not feel that way, right?
I mean,
So,
All I'm
Yeah.
saying is, as it sits right now, the board policies and the BOP are in conflict because of this. So we
Well,
need
not
to
really.
Okay, maybe we talk about this offline.
Yeah.
But my
What-
understanding was the issue is that now with the new, and I forgot the term that we have, is representative or liaison. As a liaison, yeah, you're not a voting member on a board, but the foundation, you are a voting member.
Right.
So we need to resolve that
But Howard,
difference.
recall that the step that they take is if they, a board member, is taking a position beyond liaison, they bring it to the board, like we just did with the Facebook administrator status, and ask the board what we think. So they're saying, we vote as members of the foundation. Does the board have a problem? We don't.
I
So they're-
forgot. So
okay,
you're
yeah.
saying that in the BOP, there's
Yeah.
an override.
That's the override.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So right now, it's okay, unless, assuming that they formally bring it to us, that we have a dialogue like we
So
just
have
did with this.
So do we need to then, if there's an override, which I'd forgotten there was, then do we need to have a formal vote, now that we have the new BOP, to say we are going to override it for the period of 21 calendar year, that, they can be on the board, and that way we have a vote, it's in the minutes, and everything is fine? Or do we need to do this annually?
Can you
I don't know.
repeat, can you repeat
We
that?
just need to formalize how this works.
Yeah, all right, so.
Wait, can he repeat what he just said? Could you repeat that?
Okay. I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, I thought that a liaison cannot be a voting member of a board of a district nonprofit. The foundation is actually in our policy manual that 2 board members will be voting members on the foundation board. So those two things are those two statements are in conflict. They're opposites. Now, Lisa said, and I forgot, that there's an override. They said, except when the board approves it.
Which we just, by the way, did with the Facebook status. That was our override. We voted to approve the override.
Okay, so that if there's an override in there, fine, then we need to go through a formal vote to actually override the liaison situation, saying, no, this is an exception to the rule, and that's acceptable. That way, we just do a vote, it's in the minutes, and we move on with
all
life.
right, so I move that we add language to the BOP to make it permissible for Board of Education members to be foundation members as well,
Well, where does it say
Foundation
that?
board member.
foundation board members.
Where's the restriction at?
In the BOP.
No, like where, I'm reading the Bible.
Maybe, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this at the next meeting where we go through all of these pieces and we actually have the BOP in front of us? I wasn't really prepared
All
to
right,
go through
but
this. I just wanted to put it as a
in the meantime, there's a
to-do.
motion to allow board members to be voting members of the foundation board, which Jennifer made. Does anyone want to second that?
What I'm saying is.
But we have a motion on the table. Paul, you're also one of the members. Do you want to second Jennifer's motion?
Oh, since I'm impacted, I probably shouldn't. Okay, fine, I'll second it.
All right. All in favor of allowing for,
Can we have a discussion first?
oh, I'm sorry.
But
Yeah.
if it's, but we're having a motion and we don't know if the language reads that in the BOP.
I would like to move, if we're going to do this very formally, per Roberts, I would move that we defer this discussion and we table this for the next
All right.
meeting whereby we can actually do what Michelle says, which is actually look at the language, figure this out, what's the right way to do it, and we'll resolve it at the next meeting.
Here it is. It's 6A2. Board liaisons to affiliated organizations, groups, schools, et cetera, shall serve in an observatory capacity and report information of interest to the full board. Liaisons may not vote or serve on committees of the entity with whom they are partnering.
Okay, so where's the override?
So
in
the
there?
override would be the first three words, with the exception of the Bloomfield Hills Foundation Board.
What Lisa said, that there already is an override which says, except when the Board of Education.
No, that language isn't in here.
Exactly, so that,
It's in a different part.
Okay.
so let's not, we got a lot of
All right,
things to
that's
do. Why,
fine.
we don't have to resolve this today.
All right, that's fine.
All right, 8D, Advocacy Institute report. Howard?
Well, Lisa goes first.
I'm just going to be really brief. Howard and I attended the National School Board Association Advocacy Institute. This is my first time doing it. It was virtual this year, which is actually why I did it, because normally it's in Washington, D.C. I wouldn't have been able to attend if it had been, so I was really happy. Also, the cost was like maybe 1/10 of what it normally would cost. So it was interesting to me. I'm going to let Howard cover what was discussed, but as a brand new attendee, I found that it was very useful. It taught me how to best advocate for our district and for students in Michigan. They gave us great tips, made connections with different legislators, and overall, I thought it was a really positive experience. I know that there's been concern raised or a question raised about whether this is an expensive endeavor and whether it is really professional development that we should continue doing. I thought that was a really good question. I won't go again because I think to that end, it might be beneficial for all of us who have an interest to learn how to advocate and to pick up these tips. So I really would love to see it rotate. So we send a different person each year so everyone gets a chance to do it, because it's very costly for non-COVID years. But I liked it and definitely thought it was worthwhile and learned a lot of great skills. Okay, Howard.
Okay. So, Lisa said some of this, but I'll kind of go through the process. So there's an annual advocacy institute run by National School Board Association. Typically, it's in DC in January. It's attended by about 750 to 1,000 school board members from all over the country, and about 80 Michigan school board members typically go. So between us and Texas, it's always a contest in terms of who's going to have the most participants. This year, 44 Michigan school board members attended, I think because of COVID, and it's school board members and superintendents attend. And the interesting thing is, of that, 21 or 48% were from Oakland County. So we're the biggest group that goes to this every year. The Institute is 3 days. Day 1 and day 2 are lectures and webinars, which provide us a national perspective of national education issues and educational legislation, that Congress is either doing or considering doing. This year, again, it was all virtual. Typically, it's actually in a hotel for 2 days. And then on the third day, we go to Capitol Hill, which is right down the street, and meet with our respective congresspeople and senators, where we advocate for them to support pro-education initiatives. This year, day 1 and day 2, which is a Tuesday and Wednesday, including the following. Initially, there was a release of a national poll on education. So there were 2 pollsters, one Democrat and one Republican, who did a nationwide poll on education. It showed overwhelming support of additional resources for schools to address the following issues: closing the digital divide in education for students that lack home connectivity, commonly called the homework gap. Second thing was to address COVID-19 learning loss. Third is to ensure schools are safe. Fourth, provide students with real-world skills. Fifth was a lack of personal learning focused on individual needs. And sixth, a lack of quality teachers. They all, and the poll, so the poll was supporting all those things up towards like 70, 80%, so it was not even close. Also, they showed support for increasing taxes to address these funding needs, which was very interesting. And only 18% supported vouchers to pay for students that attend private schools. Now, in Michigan, you know that we have a Michigan constitutional... Okay. In Michigan, we have a constitutional amendment in our Michigan Constitution that don't allow vouchers, but nationwide, vouchers don't seem to be favored, and only, as I said, about less than 20% of the polled people, and this is a Democrat and Republican poll, favored vouchers. We then had an update on legal issues and recent developments in the courts and how rulemaking and regulatory processes work in DC. Just so you know, there's a whole department in NSBA that has lawyers in it, and what they do is they file what are called amicus briefs to the U.S. Supreme Court. So you heard just over the last couple of days, there was a court case related to posting, or not, it was posting and discipline. It was an update of a 1969 case called Tinker on what students can protest. I didn't check, but I would almost guarantee that National School Board Association actually filed an amicus brief with the U.S. Supreme Court saying what our feelings were as an organization on that. We then had a great session from leaders in DC, including the Secretary of Education, Cardona, the acting chairwoman of the Federal Communications Commission on the homework gap, and the President's Special Assistant on Education Policy. So basically, the President's advisor, not in the Education Department, but the President's domestic advisor on education, spent about a half an hour with us telling us what President Biden feels about education issues. We then had individual sessions to inform us on 5 key issues that National School Board Association wants us to focus on. Just so also so you know, what happens is we every year get homework. The homework is like a 20-page document that NSBA sends us, and then when I get it, and I typically go, and Cynthia also went, and now Lisa went, we provide that to Pat. And Pat gives that to Karen, and Karen spreads that out through the organization, gets answers to about 20-odd questions, and provides that back to us. And then Lisa and I sat down the day beforehand and reviewed these answers. So what this does is it gives us talking points. So when we're talking to the legislators, we know what Bloomfield Hill's position is on these issues. So you can see this is kind of an elaborate process that happens every year. So these 5 issues that NSBA wanted us nationwide to lobby between Michigan and California and Alaska and Texas is, number 1 is full funding of IDEA, because currently we only get 15% funding as opposed to the commitment of 40%. 2, building stronger school infrastructure, and that's currently being discussed as part of the infrastructure package that's happening in DC right now. The homework gap and education digital divide, which was exacerbated by COVID. Building a teacher pipeline, teacher shortage, and then fighting for public school funding and resources, which is kind of a catch-all for all these things that we need more dollars. So armed with all this information, on day 3, Lisa and I attended 10 20-minute meetings with legislators. So basically, we were on from 10 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, literally nonstop, because the meetings ran over a little bit. So we got off of one Zoom meeting and immediately went on to another Zoom meeting with another legislator. We were meeting with 8 House members and the 2 U.S. senators, Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters. In these meetings, there were 9 of us from Oakland County that were attending. Oh, these meetings were set up by Oakland Schools, by the 2 lobbyists, David and Lisa. And so we met, there were 9 of us from Oakland County that attended all these meetings, and there were 6 others that sort of came in and out based upon their individual representative. But there was a core group of us that was on every single meeting. Just so you know, this is all choreographed. We met the night before. We always meet the night before, and we say, okay, what are the issues we want to talk about? And Lisa, you'll do that first issue, and Michelle, you do the second issue, and we all have it timed out of exactly how to work it. So we focused on 3 of the 5 NSBA points, talking points: school infrastructure, IDEA funding, and teacher recruitment and retention. I will tell you, as kind of a summary on all the 10 meetings, the most exciting was at the end, where we met with Representative Rashida Tlaib from the 13th, which is the Detroit area, and Representative Brenda Lawrence, who happens to represent West Bloomfield. Both were very interested in immediate funding of IDEA, full funding of IDEA. Realize IDEA was passed in 1974, and we're still totally, at 1/3 the funding that they committed to. So they were both very interested in doing immediate full funding of IDEA, and to boot, they also said that they would go contact the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. Her name is Rosa DeLaura out of Connecticut, and would advocate for getting this into the appropriations process for the 2022 budget that will be starting in October of 2021. Representative Lawrence actually is on the Appropriations Education Subcommittee, so she has additional influence on these matters. She, matter of fact, in the subcommittee, will be voting on this type of thing, so it was very important. Now, we were then going to have a kind of a post-mortem and figure out, okay, we got this great interest in these 2 issues, from these 2 representatives, where are we going with this? And we were going to have that meeting last night, but David Randalls was so busy with the budget up in Lansing that as about 25 minutes before the meeting, he canceled it. So that's going to be rescheduled. So as some people say, watch this space. We have more information coming. But normally, the representatives and senators said, yes, we're interested, we'll work on it, but on this IDEA funding, but it just hasn't happened for decades. And this is the first time that we had 2 representatives say, absolutely. Basically, where do I sign? Send me in, coach. So that was very, very exciting.
Yeah, Representative Lawrence was a board member.
Yes, she was in Southfield.
Yep.
Yes. So that's my report.
Point of order, Mr. President. May I make a brief announcement that piggybacks on this concept? I just wanted to let you all in the community know that very similar, but not the same, next Wednesday, June 30th, is National Advocacy Day, set up by, has to do with robotics, set up by the Student Association for STEM Advocacy. It's a nationwide organization. We had a huge prep meeting last Saturday where all kids from all over the country, not just First Robotics, VEX, another organization called RAC, same thing. Let's deal with the talking points, let's divide them up. So this Wednesday, I'm logging on as an observer. A couple members from our team, as well as from all over Michigan and the US, are going to corner 8 of our reps and both of our senators in little 15-minute meetings. And the specific ask, I'm so glad this came up, the specific ask that SASA is telling the kids to ask for is ESSA, Every Student Succeed, Title IV, Part A, which is student support and academic enhancement grants above the current funding of $1.22 billion. And the major talking points that these professional lobbyists told our robotics students was that we're not asking for ourselves. We are asking for this funding so that districts that don't have these programs can have these programs.
Yeah, on that, I do remember, I forgot it was probably 2 years ago, our previous board intern, Maggie Murray, went to Washington, and I know that through their advocacy, they secured additional, they helped secure additional STEM funding. I know it was...
Same thing, it's just virtual
It's just virtual this year.
Yeah.
And how many of our students are?
So 2 of the students of our team are representing. About 5 more signed up, including my own, and people had different summer conflicts that weren't foreseen. Yeah,
just so you know, this is National School Board Association. You've got FIRST does the same thing, and I think advocacy is even part of the FIRST program for them to earn their merit badges or whatever to get the chairman's award.
It is, but I was impressed to hear about the SASA group, which employs full-time adult lobbyists.
Wow.
Called the Student Association for STEM Advocacy. It's a
But
big,
there, the AASA, the National Superintendent's Organization, does this. The PTA, National PTA does it. The MEA and NEA does it, or AFT does it. So, you know, it's almost all of the educational organizations in one way, shape, or form go and try to do this kind of lobbying. And also for NSBA, this is just not board members, also superintendents are part of the process if they so choose.
Thank you all for what you do. That's amazing.
And I will then, and just a footnote, one thing that Lisa said, absolutely, other board members are encouraged, especially in this district, to go. We have had, you know, Cynthia has been going for 20-odd years. I've been going for about 8 years. Paul's gone, Jackie's gone. It's not only great professional development and for you to learn, but I will say that you build a relationship, you get to know these people, you know not only the process of how these 20-minute meetings run, but also you get to know them. Matter of fact, Representative Lawrence called me out and said, "Oh, Howard, how are you? Nice to see you. You're such a great guy." But to do that, you have to be going back not only in these once-a-year things, but seeing them at events in district, because you build a relationship and you build that trust with them. So yes, we need to get other board members in, but you have to have the continuity also to build that relationship.
Yep. Well, thank you very much. Thanks.
Representative Lawrence was my board. She was the board. I was a student.
Mike.
Oh, I was a student at Southfield Lathrop High School when she was a board member, so I know
you're going.
Representative Lawrence. So.
You're on, kid.
All right. Thank you very much for that, for the update, and for going and attending for the 3 days. With that, we will go to 8E. Right. That's where we are. Oakland County School Board update.
I don't really have an update. I'm going to pass on the interest of time.
Okay. 8F, Oakland County Health.
Yeah, so similar. The Oakland County Health Division, which has been so wonderful, epidemiologists and nurses meeting with school board members every 2 weeks all school year. We have suspended our meetings for the summer. We're going to pick up in the fall, and they're just super people. And yeah, that's my report.
Okay.
Before we go on, let me just add on a big thank you to Karen and all the staff who put together that homework. The problem that happens is they give it to us like 1 week in advance, and there's just a huge scurry. There's a whole bunch of questions, a whole bunch of work that has to be done, and I really, really want to thank Pat and his staff for dropping everything and doing it. It's above and beyond. Thank you.
Yeah, I second that. The answers were great. Thank you for doing that last minute.
I didn't have anything to do with it, but thank you. They did a great job.
Thank you,
They
Karen.
really
Forget
did.
about him.
Well, Karen and the whole
Yeah,
team.
we were sent a list of things that we had to.
You had to know.
Yeah, we had to know.
Gotcha.
We had to share Bloomfield's opinion on it. And so they were done at the
that
last
gives
minute
us the
because we
talking
received
points in
them.
terms of what we want to say.
We received them late, and I did share the feedback to please give it to the districts earlier so that we don't force administration to have to drop everything like that. But thank you,
Okay.
and everyone who worked on it.
Okay, with that, we will go to board business. So right before this meeting, we had a closed-door meeting regarding the superintendent evaluation. Jennifer, who's vice president, who's chair of this, and before your presentation, I wanted, on behalf of the board, I don't think we said it, you know, in the other meetings, but thank you very much for doing all of this, putting everything together, getting us prepared for, you know, what we're about to do.
It's not me. I had great partners called Superintendent Watson and Rebecca, who really did all the research and put the info together. And thank you guys for weighing in on the artifacts.
Okay, with that.
Okay, so the state legislature mandates that every public school in Michigan, and hopefully the other 49 states do it as well, that we evaluate our superintendent annually. This is a strange year because of COVID. We did not perform an evaluation in 2020 because every goal, every operation got thrown off kilter, so it just didn't make any sense. So normally we don't evaluate our superintendent in June. We are now on a calendar year schedule. From here on out, all the evaluations will be done in December, and if the board could change it if they could. So the evaluation we just did before this meeting was a catch-up evaluation to cover the time from when Superintendent Watson first joined us in January of 2020 through 2020, and then into the 20 to 21 school year, because all of those types of goals were tied in with COVID. So if the camera can pick this up, in order to do the superintendent evaluation, you have to have a tool, and there are several choices. Our board decided to use the tool that was written by the Michigan Association of School Boards, or MASB. It's pretty detailed. It has 3 different major rubric areas where you have to administer scores, and some of it is database based on student standardized testing scores and internal testing scores of the district. And then some of it is based on overall district goals, and then some of it is based on operational observations of the superintendent in the area of board relations, community relations, staff relations, finance, and curriculum and instruction. So we went through, we had a prep session 2 weeks ago. We had a facilitator from MASB come help us, and we got locked in a room earlier this afternoon and went through and completed the evaluation. It is done by consensus. It is not done by vote. So it requires a Board of Education to discuss and come to agreements on the various decisions. So I am happy to report that Superintendent Watson did very well. He received a 3.68 out of a possible 4 points, which is a 92% rating, which places him in the category of a highly effective superintendent. So with that, does anyone have any questions or comments want to add to?
No, I think after probably the motion and we
Okay.
vote on it, maybe some of us will have
So
some things
it's
to
my,
say.
and I just say what I said before, that we are just so very grateful to have Superintendent Watson, who dealt with this, bomb that went off all over the world, faced incredible pressures and challenges with incredible grace and facility to you and all your team. And looking forward to not having to deal with that every day, so we can do all the other things we want to do. So with that, I move that the Bloomfield Hills Board of Education adopt the completed, well, this actually isn't the year-end evaluation, the completed mid-year evaluation of Superintendent Pat Watson pursuant to Michigan law, including 1249 and 1249B of the revised school code, and has rated him highly effective for the 2020-21 school year.
Second.
I have a motion, support. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Congratulations, Superintendent Watson. I'm sure, some of my colleagues, but on behalf of the school board, on behalf of the district, on behalf of the community, we thank you for everything that you've done, since you've arrived here. And I think, this highly effective rating, is just one piece of, like Jennifer said, we can't thank you enough for what you've done, especially in this year. And you're beloved superintendent by the community, by the students, by the people that work for you, and by the school board. So thank you very much.
Mr. President, point of personal privilege, can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes, we could take, what time is it? We'll take a 5-minute break, and we can come back at 8:41. Is that okay? Is everyone okay to take a 5-minute break?
We'll make it 8:42.
8:42? Okay, we'll
5
come back.
minutes.
5 minutes, 8:42. Take a 5-minute
My math,
break, cameras off. We can get drinks for freshmen. Keith?
Thank you. Good evening. Hopefully I can continue on with a few agenda items here that have a feel-good nature to them. Right now, our district is at the table with all 7 of our bargaining groups in some manner or another. 5 of them are bargaining full contracts and 2 are bargaining wage reopeners. So the pleasure before you today to bring forth a Tentative agreement with our instructional assistants. Our instructional assistants are those that work over at Wing Lake and support the students and staff over there. I want to extend a thank you and congratulations to both my team and that of the instructional assistants, including Willie Jew, who is their president, and Scott Worrell, who is the MEA executive director. And before you, you have the motion to ratify that tentative agreement as was presented to you in our closed session on Monday.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the contract with the Bloomfield Hills Association of Instructional Assistants as presented.
I second.
Okay, second by, we'll say Siva. Okay, discussion? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Congratulations. Next, Keith, see?
We actually, after each contract ratification, I think that someone would like to speak on behalf of that group.
Oh, absolutely.
So right now, I'm going to ask David, I believe, or Beth, whoever is going to do so. But Willie was unable to be here tonight, but he wanted to do a little video. So we have a short little video from him, and then Scott Worrell is going to come up and speak on behalf of the group as well.
Absolutely. My things don't work.
Hi, my name is Willie Jew. I'm the president for the instruction system at Wing Lake Development Center. I want to give a big thank you to Pat Watson, the Bloomfield Hill Board, Keith, Karen Healy, Rebecca Anderson for a smooth and great inauguration. I want to give a big thank you to Keith for all of the things he's done for us. I thank you, thank you, thank you. You're the man.
Of course you wanted to play that video.
One more time.
I want to see that contract immediately.
Is that done before the negotiation or after?
Is there going to be a video like this after every single one?
Willie is wonderful. My name is Scott Worrell. I'm the new executive director of the MEA for the affiliates associated groups in this district. And I want to thank Keith McDonald and Karen Healy and Rebecca Anders, who were at the table with our team in supporting us and going through the process of negotiating. And it was a cooperative and collaborative experience. I want to thank Mr. Watson and the Board of Education for that experience as well. And so, I think, again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Keith, C, ratification administrative council letter of understanding.
All right, and as I mentioned earlier, we have, again, all 7 groups. This is one of our groups who have just a wage reopener, so they have a current contract wage reopener. We would just bargain that wage section or that wage article within the contract. And with Mary Hilberry, who is the president of the Ad Council, we were able to enter into an agreement, and that is the motion, again, that you have presented in front of you and that we reviewed on Monday at our closed session.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion?
Well, I move that the Board of Education approve the letter of understanding with the Administrative Council as presented.
Do I have support?
Support.
Okay, support from Jennifer. Any discussion? Nope. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Who's speaking now?
Thank you.
Who's going to say you're the man for this one?
But Andy Geniak, our principal over at West Hills, is, and he'll come up and he'll say some things that are very similar to what we're
I know. Willie gave me a tough act to follow here. That's just not, it's a tough spot to be. I guess first, I know this might not apply exactly to the contract or the wage reopener or the wage, whatever we call it, thing that we did. But I just want to thank our custodial staff, our maintenance crew, our food service, our secretaries, our paras, our teachers, our LST team, the Board of Education, our superintendent for everything they did this year. It really, truly is nothing short of remarkable. And, I hope I didn't leave anyone out. I was trying to rehearse that, so I didn't leave anyone out. If I did, I thank you too. You're all part of that puzzle that truly helped us navigate through just an incredible year. So I was just telling Jennifer that the end of the year, it was just awesome to celebrate with kids. and be able to do some of the ceremonies that we did, the clap outs, the graduation ceremonies, and seeing those smiles, not just having to look at little wrinkles next to the eyes to be able to observe that. And so I will move and say thank you to Mary Hilberry and Keith for their work in facilitating the work that went into an agreement here. And I know I speak for my admin council team when I just say we're excited to get back at it after probably a little bit of time off to kind of recoup, re-energize and whatnot. But we're definitely excited to get back at it in the fall here with hopefully most of the restrictions and whatnot behind us. So thank you, Board of Education. Thank you, Pat. And we'll get back at it in August here. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
Keith, D?
All right, and that's a good segue into our next group, which is the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, or better known as AFSCME. AFSCME includes our custodians, maintenance, grounds crew, bus drivers, bus aides, and they had a full contract this year, and so we negotiated with them over the course of a few meetings and came to a mutual agreement, which we reviewed on Monday, and we have the motion in front of you.
Can somebody make a motion?
Sure.
Siba?
I move the Board of Education approve the contract with the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, AFSCME, as presented.
Second.
Support by Howard. Discussion, none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Keith, who's speaking?
And I'd like to thank both teams for all their efforts. Chris Billell is their president, and Rhonda Traus would serve in a capacity similar to what Scott serves for the MEA, but she does so for the AFSCME group. Chris was unable to be here tonight, but he did make a video as well, and I'm going to ask Dave or Beth to play that now.
Good evening, board members, parents, and teachers. My name is Chris Billell. I am the president of Local 1628. We represent certified bus drivers, licensed mechanics, lead custodial, grounds, maintenance, and skilled trade departments. On behalf of the men and women of these groups, I would like to thank the board for their continued support and have a great summer. Thank you.
Very good. E?
All right, and the last contract for ratification this evening is for the Michigan Education Support Personnel Association, and this is our secretarial group. Wonderful process working with them. Their president is Kimberly Bilkovic. She is the secretary over at Lone Pine, for those of you in that community. And before you is the motion to approve that contract as presented in the closed session on Monday.
Can I get a motion?
Board of Education approve the contract with the Michigan Education Support Personnel Association as presented.
Second.
You have support? Discussion? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you, and we're going to have Scott.
Keith, thank you so much
Thank
for, is it customary to have to do every contract at the same time?
Don't we have one more video or speech?
We don't have a video, but Scott would like to come
Oh,
up.
Scott.
Kim would be here, but she is celebrating her 31st wedding anniversary. So I was gracious to speak on her behalf, of the 34 office personnel that work in this district. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Karen Healy, Randy English, who are at the table with us. And thank you, Mr. Watson and the Board of Education. These secretaries worked hard to get the buildings opened for students as they do every year. And especially this year, it was a pleasure and an honor to see them work and make it so that our students would excel and our buildings were functioning. Thank you again.
Thank you. No, Jennifer.
I'm sorry,
No
I
problem.
must be very impatient, but thank you so much, Keith. Is it normal to do every contract
Not all
in the same
time.
year?
Not all the time. It's most I've done in 1 year.
Is it normal to do it like a month after you arrive?
Definitely, that's a definite no. I will definitely give a no on that. So it was I wouldn't say challenging, but it is challenging at the same time. It would have been much challenging if I didn't have a good group to work with on the other side of the table and every time we met. So We have great employees, and the relationships are great, I believe, between us and them, which makes actually meeting with them pleasurable. They're not contentious negotiations in any manner at all. So, I look forward to that opportunity to learn about them and be able to do what we can for our employees. And to your point, though, and I probably could have mentioned it earlier, 2 of the contracts, the instructional assistant and the secretary contracts, are 2-year contracts, and then the ASME contract will be a 3-year contract. We're looking at another full contract to be a 3-year contract as well, maybe even a third there. And then we have teachers and administrators who will open up contract negotiations next year, and we try to find a way to stagger them to keep my sanity and Scott's sanity a little bit better.
And we do have some more contracts coming in July?
You do. We have at least one additional coming in July.
Got it.
Thanks again, Keith. Thanks for all
Very
your
welcome.
work, and thanks for getting these done. It's very important.
My
What
pleasure.
is this about our district that every time a new person comes in, we throw them in the deep end of the pool? Both you.
Right?
With that, we'll have Tina now to come up, talk through a budget. She goes from remote to live,
Yes.
back to remote, back to
I
live.
don't have the agenda in front of me, but it is probably this year's final budget that is the
Yes.
next agenda item. So
Yes.
we went through a presentation in more detail at the study session 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
So I will entertain any questions.
Unless anyone has questions, can I get a motion?
I move that, oh, go ahead, Siva.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the final budget revisions for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 as detailed in the attachments and summarized below. General fund revenue transfers in of 99,086,881 with expenditures of 96,385,478. Excuse me, with revenue over expenditures of 2.701403. Special revenue funds, 19,118,507 of revenues, expenditures of 18,821,065, revenue over expenditures of 297,442.
Do we have support?
Support.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? No. Motion passes. Tina, G is the adoption of the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget, which you just presented earlier.
Correct.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
In accordance with the Uniform Budget and Accounting Act, I move that the Board of Education adopt the attached resolution and related original budgets for the fiscal year 2021-2022 for the general fund and special revenue funds as required by law and is summarized by the table below.
Do I have support?
Would you like me to read? I can read the numbers. Okay. General fund is $94,513,000. For revenue is $94,513,420. Expenditures, $97,114,857 for a revenue over expense of negative 2.601437. And then in addition, the special revenue fund of revenues of $21,019,237, expenditures of $20,709,994, with revenue over expense of $309,243.
Do I have support?
Support.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None. Motion passes. Thank you, Tina, for your hard work, for the prior year budget, current year budget, everything you're doing. We really, really appreciate it.
Yes.
And we couldn't have gotten through this year financially without you. And your team, sorry.
And Karen Hildebrand and your team.
Your team. Yeah. It's a team effort. Thank you for your support.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
you.
Tina.
Thank you.
H, all wills.
Good evening, everybody. It's very great to be here. In your board packet, for those following along, on page 288 is really the recommendations for Bid Pack 3. It's the bulk of the work for North Hills Middle School. I thought it'd be good to give just a little perspective. So right after the bond passed in the fall of 2020, through early 2021, there's over 50 user group meetings with the programmers, the architects, the user groups for the district. I know when we first got involved, we were looking at some design development estimates that were a little slightly above where the budget was for the school itself. Well, the good news is through the collaborative efforts of the bond team, on June 8th, there was 116 bids received, as Trustee Kumar mentioned in the FFLA report. Part of that was just really the efforts of the district, advertising on the state's website, on the district's website, and more importantly with Bart Mallow's outreach to the community to have literally over 116 bidders, 5 at least in each category. So in your board packet tonight, you have 21 different bid categories totaling roughly $31.2 million. It does include a 10% contingency with the allocation of the architect engineering fee of 5.6%, which was approved by the board back in August of 2020. I'm glad to report that this $36,264,252.92, in addition to the $7 million previously approved by the board for the site and foundation work, puts the project currently about 1.25% under the budget that was indicated of $55,165,000, which we'll report out at our quarterly report going forward. I'm also pleased to announce that in the recommendations, there's several points of the project. So for instance, there will be a new gym floor installed at North Hills. There's a demountable partition, which is divided between there. It also includes clear story glass as well as upgrades to wall tile and some of the other operational things that will save the district money going forward. At this time, I will turn it over to the board for any questions you may have.
First, can I get a motion?
Sure. Do we want to read the entire thing? Because it's quite lengthy.
All 21 bid categories.
I'm sorry?
There's 21 bid categories. I'll leave it to the board.
You want me to read it, Howard, since I've been reading the length?
Jonathan, why don't you go for it, since you're Mr. Consent, and you could read this.
Can we not read it and publish it on the website?
Let's see.
Yeah.
That's fine. We could just read the first line, Jonathan.
Want me to do it?
Just stop it.
All right. I move that the Board of Education approve bid pack number 3 for North Hills Middle School as attached.
Do I have support?
Support.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Motion passes. Thanks, Paul.
Thank
Before you leave, Mr. Wills,
Yes, sir.
are we not considering having a ribbon? Because we just had a ribbon cutting a few weeks ago at North Hills. Are we considering having a ribbon cutting at South Hills?
Yes, we are. As a
It's
matter of
already,
fact.
It's on your calendar.
I'm just wondering for the public, just so they know.
Oh,
Yes, we are working with the communications department. July 29th, it'll be before the normal board meeting. So
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that information.
I just wanted to share with you, I'm chauffeuring a member of the robotics team driving by Lasser yesterday, and I'm like, look, and it finally sunk in why they had to move out, why it was important, and there was just general excitement and celebration to see the transformation begin.
And the cool thing is, I think as a board as well as a community member, those things are also on the website. There's cameras that'll actually link it up, and it's half-hour updates.
Oh, wow.
So again, that's part of the dashboard
There's
report.
an Eagle Cam over
It's
the
a
building.
project cam, so you can see them starting to push the dirt for the new additions.
It's really cool. If you haven't seen
Are
it,
we
watch
collecting
it.
that to make a video at
There'll
the
be
end
a
of
full
the time
video at
lapse?
the end, correct.
All right.
So it'll be good stuff.
Love that.
Like when you can speed up
Yeah.
and see the
Correct.
whole thing.
Yep.
I love it.
All right.
Thank you.
thank you, Paul. Okay, with that, we are at I, AP Psychology. Is that going to be Todd? Is that going to be you, or is someone presenting?
Kristen here?
Kristen.
Kristen? Sarah, somebody? Okay, now we have a,
Hello, all.
Hi, Sarah.
hello?
Shortest presentation we've ever had.
There we go. Dave's there, just making sure.
I'll hold it there.
Yeah, it's up, Sarah, just whenever you're ready.
getting late and they have younger children, so I wanted them to be able to have a moment with their families. So what we are doing here is just presenting to the board the AP Psychology Resource Review that we have done. It is a board policy that any whole class adoption of a text is approved by the board, and then under the superintendent's discretion, the money is spent. So Beth, we can go to the next page. And what I would like to say is the policy that was followed here is the same policy that we've used for all of our adoptions for all social studies text. There was the reasoning behind it is the redesign. This isn't just because we wanted a new text, but AP has redesigned their psychology course, and we wanted to make sure that we had text that was current, number one, and also embedded the methodologies that are now being incorporated into the advanced placement courses. Through the evaluation, the current text, which is the Myers Psychology AP of 2014, is outdated. So we needed to have a new psychology text. So going to the next one. And so this is the timeline that we looked at. We started in February, went to March, went to the publishers. We talked to the other districts around us to see what they were also using. In May, we analyzed feedback from both students and teachers, and then made the recommendation to the BIC, and then also now to the Board of Education. And then we wanted to make sure we had this approved so we can place our order so these books are in the hands of the students on the first day of school. I'm not sure, Beth, if we went over the text that we selected or not. It might be, oh, there it is. These are the resources that we reviewed. So there were two of the main ones. There aren't a lot of AP different sources, as you can imagine. Usually it's 2 or 3 at most. And then the next slide, I believe, will identify this resource that we selected through our process here. Oh, again, there's our process and also what we were looking for when we evaluated it. Next slide. I know I'm rushing through, but I also am cognizant of time. Students were also given a rubric. So it wasn't just like, hey, did you like the text? But more importantly, like, how user-friendly was it? In the end, our selection, sorry, Beth, our selection was the updated version that you saw on the next slide. And the teachers are very excited about it, as are the students. Well, not the students this year because they're not going to see it, but they felt that it was a very helpful text for them and prepared them for the exam that they took in May this year. So this is where we are. Our recommendation is the Myers Psychology for AP 3rd edition. It's updated as of 2021, so the newest edition. And that is our presentation on psychology.
Okay, first, before we go to discussion, any questions for Sarah?
Yeah,
Sarah, could you go? Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I mean, you may not have heard me. So yeah, I'm just seeing if we have any questions for you before we make a motion.
Sarah, can you remind us how many years and whether there's online updates and things of that nature?
So AP does the same as IB. I'm sorry that you cut off. I don't know if WebEx is a little bit different here, but generally AP does about between a 7 and 8 year review of their curriculum. So every 7 to 8 years, most curriculums are updated using the new methodologies. Specifically, the ones that was new for AP Psych this year was the C3 method, which is also incorporated into all of our social studies curriculum in 9th and 10th grade specifically, which is the new model of historians. In terms of online updates, there are online resources available to the students. Most publishers are going in a direction that way in terms of being able to update and get updates into the hands of students. I, off the top of my head, don't remember if, I believe we have to buy the license by the students, so that we want them to have a text. And then once the students are in the classroom, then we also buy the license for the online resources, and that goes by year. So it goes by how many students are enrolled in that course each year for the AP Psych.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, can I get a motion?
I move the Board of Education approve the recommended AP Psychology textbook adoption as presented in accordance with Board Policy 3004.
Support.
Support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Oh, she's
Oh,
up
you got me
next.
again.
What?
She's up next.
Oh, she's, oh, well. Okay, Sarah J.
Sure. First I want to thank Kristen BGA and her team on the work that they did on that. It was a quick turnaround and they did a great job. We're now moving into the ELA 912 project, and this is, we are voting on two books tonight as adaptions, as whole class novels. But this is part of a larger belonging agency in the 9th through 12th grade in terms of the curriculum and the books that are available. Thank you, Beth. So one of the things that they have done is they have gone through it and did an audit of the current book room at the high school and took a look at that according to a very large rubric in terms of who the main characters are, how inclusive is it, is there entry points for the students to come in and have a conversation. And it's not that we've gotten rid of any books in that book room, but also just an idea of what we have and are our students reflected in the text that we are using. So they use the resource, How Inclusive is Your Classroom Library? And that is how they're starting to go through and adapt some more diverse experiences and perspectives in the books that the students read. Just for point of information, any book that's used as a selected book in terms of the student gets to select it, or a book club book where the students have different choices, does not come before the board because students have a different choice. The books that we bring before the board in terms of ELA are books that are whole class novels. So every student needs to read that book to be able to move ahead. And that's the process that's behind that. Okay, Beth, next one. And it was interesting this year during COVID, they were able to get quite a bit into that book room and really do a lot of auditing of those books. So these are just some of the guiding principles. But they wanted the diverse experiences and perspectives. They wanted to have own voices, which means that the voice tends to be younger. The voices who are part of a group that they depict in the work. In other words, that if you have an author who is writing about people of color, you'd want the author also to be a person of color. And then the last section is, are there implicit and explicit biases? Is it more than just a single story? What's the time period? Does it tie into other books that we have at the time? So this is just a very small snippet of what they did to go through and look at books that they are in their library, but also that they wanted to bring as a whole class novel. Next slide. So their overview of their project, they wanted to do it, basically 4 parts to it, but they wanted to do shared readings and then the reading identity work, which they started last fall, the book room audit, which they've done now, and then now they're starting to really build that collective understanding and vision of what they want their ELA books and book selection to be a part of. Next slide. And so what we, working with the famous Tina, we have put a budget together of $14,000 per year for all grade levels 9 through 12 to add new whole class novels, book club units, and supplemental texts. And then we are also going to create learning community libraries. So 100 choice reading titles, and there are at least 3 copies of each. That will be accessed in all learning communities 9-10 at the high school. Working with Charlie Hallworth, we have identified display areas that we can use so the books can be on display. One of the things that we're finding is in that building, there aren't a lot of bookshelves in those learning communities themselves. So we want to get the books in front of the students so they can see them. And then we're also going to utilize lockers as storage for those books so that we can check the books out right to the kids instead of making there be extra steps to get to those books. So the budget is 2 different things. One is adding to the actual text that is in the classroom, and the second one is libraries for free choice. Go ahead, Beth. And then this is a really important reminder that Liza, I think, is it's out there, but I think it's really important for everybody, is an inclusive curriculum cannot be achieved by simply checking off a list of diverse authors and texts. Instead, inclusive practices must infuse every part of our pedagogy. So it's not just about what you read, but also how you approach that reading, how you have students step into those books, and how they communicate about those books. And then the next page. So they use this evaluation tool. These are just a few of the questions that are on there, but this is, we just wanted to put this in front of everyone, so as more books come up as a whole class adoption, you are understanding that the same evaluation tool is used for each and every one of those books. Next slide. And then, so this is Poet X is the first one we want to bring forth tonight. It's a whole class novel. We originally had that in American Lit 1600 to present, which is usually paired with AP US History. They did that this year, so it had already been adopted for that. But we have realized that in the course of the study that it actually fits better in the American Lit 1900 to present. And so we just want to make sure that this is approved for that classroom. And for that class is the Poet X, which we, again, as you can see, is a book award winner. It's an amazing text, and the students really enjoy reading it and also are able to connect with it quite well. So that's Poet X for American Lit 1900 to present. And then the other book we have on the next slide is The Firekeeper's Daughter. Oops, sorry. So they piloted that book this year in 1600, and now they're going to take that same book and pilot it or put it into the 1900 American Lit 1900 class with amazing amount of samples. If you have a moment to poke around and look at what the sample poems are that the students wrote and how they connected with the text, it really is a fascinating look at how text can really bring out identities in students and have them start to connect to what they're reading to the world that they know. Next slide. Again, some beautiful student reflections. I won't have you read those now, but so move Poet X to American Lit. We need to purchase 130 additional copies. And then the other one is the adoption of The Firekeeper's Daughter for the 9th grade. For the 1600 class that replaces where Poet X was in their curriculum at that place. The Firekeeper's Daughter also went through the rigorous process that we talked about before in terms of inclusivity and making sure that it met all the standards that they are looking for as an English department. And then I think that is where we are. Right, this was what we presented to the BIC. The slide, we were just saying that this is the process we went through. We just wanted to know if there was anything else that you would want to know in the presentation. BIC indicated that they thought it was comprehensive and amazing, but that was just the same presentation that we had before. So that is the end of our presentation for Poet X and The Firekeeper's Daughter.
Any questions?
Yeah. Sarah, can you send the board a copy of the student reflections? I'd be really curious to read them, and I can't speed read that fast. It wasn't on the screen long enough, but my son and Jennifer's son read it this year, so I'm curious to see what other students had to say about it.
I do believe that on the Novus board agenda, there's like a PDF at the bottom that has those slides on it that would have.
Oh, all right.
It's in Novus.
Yep.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Sarah, could we get one copy of each book when they come in to just pass around among us for anyone who wants to read them?
Absolutely. Would you like your own learning community library for the Board of Education? We'd be happy to set up a library for you, and we will get you some copies of all these books. That would be great.
If you could do that, Sarah, that would be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And actually, I think that would be. I'm driving to Maine tomorrow morning, and Firekeeper's Daughter is my Audible book that I'm listening on all the way to Maine, so I'm excited to read it as well. So, sorry, Pat, I cut you off.
Safe travels, and yes, if we could get copies for all the board, that would be terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome. I am excited for the learning community, the Board of BOE learning community. It's going to be great.
You have a question?
First, Sarah, are you going to Acadia?
I am going to Acadia. I'm going to pick up my daughter first, and then we're going to Acadia.
Wonderful. You'll love it.
Any other relevant questions?
On a more germane point, It is wonderful to see all the efforts that have been going in this district between DARE and the GET teams and the strategic plan and the work that we're going to be doing that we did on the values going to mission and vision over the next, tonight and over the next few weeks, to really start to see the coherence going between what we do up at the stratosphere here on the board, getting it all the way down into the classroom. That really is exactly what the intent of coherence is, and it's really wonderful to see. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll just point out, this is I think the third time since 3:30 that we've seen written evidence of budget with learning and strategic and DEI goals. So right, I'm getting delirious. But already, our administrators who are, preparing the presentations are showing us the money and where the mouth is. Love it.
With that, can I get a motion? Oh, question. No, that came from Sarah. Can I get a motion?
And I know Todd's in there somewhere too, but all thanks to Liza Louder and her team that they have done an amazing review, and they have found it fascinating as they have done it as well. So we are excited for that same coherence that Trustee Barron was mentioning, and it's exciting work. It's exciting time to be part of a district.
Can I get a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the recommended novels to be additions to the Poet X and Fire Catchers curriculum as presented, in accordance with Board Policy 3004.
Second.
Motion, support, discussion, no. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Sarah,
Thank you.
Todd, your team.
Thanks, sir.
I think that's it for Sarah.
Enjoy your drive.
Enjoy your drive.
Thank you.
Big drive.
K, reconfirmation of extended continuality of learning plan.
Did we approve the AP text?
Oh. Yeah, we did approve the AP Psych.
That was before that.
That was before. Don't mess, we're on a roll here. Don't have us go backwards. We want to go forward with this agenda. K, can I get a motion?
I move the Board of Education.
Go ahead.
I move that the Board of Education reconfirm the Bloomfield Hills Extended Continuity of Learning Plan as mandated by the state of Michigan and as amended and updated to include all applicable federal, state, and local educational and safety mandates.
Do I have support?
Support.
Support. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. L, can I get a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve membership in the Michigan Association of School Boards for the 2021-22 school year in the amount of $8,302.
Second.
You have support, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes.
Considering all the calls we make to Brad, this is well worth it.
M, Michelle?
I move that the Board of Education approve Strategic Goal 5, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion as presented.
Second.
Oh,
Sorry. Do you want to read it?
no.
No, go ahead.
She said-
Read it.
Yeah, it's nice. Read it.
Not as long as the other
Okay.
one.
Bloomfield Hills schools will foster, encourage, and develop a diverse culture with equity and inclusion are at the forefront of decision-making processes. Multiple perspectives are shared, celebrated, and included, empowering students and staff with the knowledge, experience, and skills necessary to make the world a just and equitable place for all.
Second.
We have support, discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you, committee members who served on this, and thank you for that work, which really appreciated. N, that's me. So I have a list of our goals. I'll give everyone a quick update of where we are. 1, by March 2021, complete and adopt BHS value statement, review mission and vision statements, consider potential updates. I think we're in the middle of that. One of these will be approved tonight. B, upon completion of Goal 1, the team of 8 will adopt a strategic plan, metrics, and targets for Goal number 1, education, 2, resources, 3, workforce, 4, communications. The team of 8 will craft new strategic plan, Goal Area 5, we did that tonight. Diversity, equity, inclusion with metrics and targets. I think we're in the process of the others, and tonight we passed 5. 2, throughout 2001, on board 3 new board members providing mentorship as requested. I think by the amount of meetings we've had, I think they've been onboarded, and I think they've come to us as mentors, so I think we're definitely working through that. 3, by June 2021, assess what committees' functions are needed to best facilitate board goals. We have a meeting in July 15th to go through our new committee structure. 4, by June 2021, review and consider the adoption of MASB Board of Education Governance Standards. We already adopted that. 5, by June 2021, complete approve the board operating procedures and review, update the following board documents, board norms, meeting protocols to include agenda adherence, modifications, multiple amendments at all active board resolutions as part of the board operating procedures. As soon as possible, adopt the system, respond to emails and public comments that is transparent to the full board. We adopted the board operating procedures. And then the, I think 5A, I think within the BOP, I think, again, a lot of the stuff we've done or are continually working on. So that's ongoing.
I would consider our class with Deb Macon on Tuesday a review of board norms.
Yep.
Yeah.
We did that. 6, by June 2021, participate in training on parliamentary procedures, board and committee meeting agenda settings, MSC board self-evaluation tool. We talked about the other night about the board self-evaluation tool. That will be in process. And on 6, parliamentary procedures, board and committee meeting agenda settings. That part, board and committee meeting agenda settings, will be discussed in July 15th. Parliamentary procedures, similar to, we could just invite Deb Macon back, to us in terms of that if we wanted to. So I think that's in process. 7, by December.
Before we go on, back to number 5, you're talking about board norms. I think we still need to really talk through and develop our own board norms. I don't think we have them at this point.
We also, I was going to bring up, we haven't brought together a list of board resolutions. We should just compile them and look at them.
7, by December 2021, assess our effectiveness by completing the MASB self-evaluation tool, consider including with staff, students, community on how well the board is functioning, develop action steps 2022 based on the evaluation results. We already talked about that we're going to be doing the self-assessment, so that's in process. 8, focus and working on a team of 8 with a unified voice in order to effectively lead the district and meet established goals and objectives. We've been spending a lot of time, including what we did Tuesday, including what we're going to do 7/15, working as a team of 8, so we're working on that. 9, immediately following adoption of these goals by the end of February 21, the team of 8, working with administration, will create then follow-up year-long scheduling reporting calendar. I think we already have a calendar in place, and we're putting a lot of things on the calendar, as evident by this long agenda tonight.
Rebecca, I believe, is our
She's working on that.
quarterback for the calendar. So and she put it in our update last week, probably every update.
Yep.
It'll also be part of our July 15th retreat as well.
So as our, I guess we should study it, and if we have suggestions, just send them on. I had one question here. Oh, yes. The self-evaluation tool, number 6, do we need to get trained in it the way we get trained for the superintendent evaluation tool, or?
I'll inquire.
Okay.
I need to reach out and inquire about the process, what we need to do. Some of us, like as Howard, I think, mentioned once, we've done it once only, me and Howard, and I think, I just need to go through that process. So,
Well, sorry, but we did vote to adapt the MASB evaluation tool that goes with the board governance designed by MASB.
Right.
So I think for year 1, we decided we were going to have an instructor lead us through it, and then we'll know how to do that. I know you guys have done a board evaluation, but not the MASB. It's pretty comprehensive.
Okay.
So do we have a date or schedule for that to happen?
not yet, but we can, we'll get something on the calendar, and then, I'll figure out who I need to reach out to get a facilitator here.
All right, let me just tell you, having looked at it and done it once, you don't need formal training necessarily. The superintendent evaluation, because it's state law, requires you to have training. You have to check a box.
Sure.
For
But
this
what
one,
I meant is
it's
it
not
a good idea
So,
to have?
number 1, there's no
training.
state requirement. You don't have to. Number 2, the self-evaluation for the board members is available on the MASB website for free. so you don't have to pay for it. But as Paul was indicating, if you want to have it facilitated, I believe what happens is you do it offline. You go on the website and you just do it yourself. And once the all seven of us have done it, it gets consolidated electronically and sent back to you. That's all for free. Then if you want to have a facilitator come in and help you interpret the data and then come up with next steps, you can pay a nominal fee for that. So that would be a choice that we as a board can make.
Any other questions? Siva?
I ended up taking that class, actually. I think if we're going to get a facilitator, you don't need to attend the class. I think if you're going to get a facilitator for the self-evaluation, you don't need to sign up for the class. The facilitator will kind of walk you through that.
So
It's pretty self-explanatory anyways.
Does the facilitator occur before you take the evaluation, or is it helping you do the results?
I thought the facilitator helps you do both.
Oh, so it's you see the facilitator twice? Anyway, Paul, find out.
You can do it in one shot, basically.
Oh, because again, when we did it the last time, it was, okay, you go on the website, and over the next week, when you get around to it, do the evaluation, and then like a week or two later, when everyone had done it, you click the button and you get the results summarized.
Yeah, I could find out.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. So we're going to go to O, approval of vision statement. Okay, so I have it, we've worked with, just for the community, we've worked with a consultant to, help us at other meetings that we've had in the past, kind of wordsmith some of our ideas. And we've come up with at least one or two that, tonight we're going to talk about. So what I want to do is at least put the first one out there, talk about, see if we as a group, what we think of each of them, and then maybe we could rally around, one of the two, and then vote on it. So I will put forth this one as one of the two. BHS will empower every student to achieve their goals through a system that is inclusive and equitable for all. And then we can start at the end. Jonathan, your thoughts on this one?
I like this one better than the second one.
Okay, Siva?
I like this one better than the second one.
Lisa?
I like this one better than the second one.
Jennifer?
I like the second one better than this one, but I'm open to having that language in the mission statement instead of the vision statement.
Okay. I like this one better than the second one. Howard?
I have similar thoughts that Jennifer has, which is I like the second one better than the first one, but I think trying to build consensus, what I would love to have is a 7-0 vote on this, because it really will show solidarity behind where we want the district to be. So while I would like the second one, I would be willing to go with the first one as long as because we haven't really spent a lot of time on the mission piece, but if we take some of because there aren't that many differences between the two, but the pieces that are different, if we incorporate those into the mission statement, I would be willing to go with the first option.
Michelle?
No pressure on the 7-0. I have to go after you, huh? No, I'm only kidding. I do like the first option, but there are components of number 2 that I really like. But for being able to say it and explain it, I'm going to go with option number 1.
Okay. Siva?
What about Pat?
Well,
Go
Siva
ahead,
had a
Pat.
question.
You
And we can-
I'll defer to Siva first, and I'll go right after Siva.
Okay.
Thank you, Siva.
So just to add some color to option one, the reason I like option 1 is because I thought it was mostly positive. It's short. Again, it's great for an elevator speech like Michelle Harmala mentioned. There's a tinge of negativity to option 2. And I think option 2, the last phrase, is very action-oriented, and I think that's best placed in a mission statement. The option 1 for a vision statement is more aspirational, and it's more of a destination, right? And so for that reason, I like option one better.
Thank you. Pat?
So I'm just gonna call it how I see it. I don't like number 2. I strongly support number 1. And I really see us working together to be brand ambassadors for the school district. So number 1, we talk about inclusive and equitable. And someone says to you, "So, but what does that really mean?" Well, we want to make sure we close the opportunity gaps, whatever verbiage we want to use. You need a bulletin list of all the things that are about being equitable and inclusive. So it doesn't mean that's not a focus area, but that gives you additional speaking points when people want to extend the conversation. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, let me tell you about the strategic plan and what we're doing in there. Well, what is that going to look like? I can answer that too, but if they're done with the conversation at that point, they're done. If we're not going to name every single thing we're doing besides that's inclusive and equitable, then I think just having the opportunity gap in there, it doesn't fit, it doesn't make sense. We have a lot of priorities, as we should, because we have different children with different needs who need different opportunities. And I think it's going to be important we articulate all those. We talked about the bond and where we're spending money. You know, we didn't get a chance to talk about, again today, the special ed redesign, where we're making sure inclusive and equitable, making sure our special ed rooms are right by everyone else's classroom. They're not in the back of the building in a corner or someplace like that. Make sure equitable, are they getting the rooms they need? So when you talk about having a sensory room, a therapy room in a building, like I want to arm you with that knowledge so when you're out in the community and they say inclusive and equitable, well, what are you doing? You can articulate everything and it means something because one of those points will mean something to that person's child.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
I appreciate what the superintendent says. This closing opportunity gaps is incredibly important to me. Has been for 8 years since I've been on the board, but in the interim, since I've been elected, ESSA has been approved through the federal government, and it talks about the gaps specifically. The State Board of Education, their top 10 plan talks about closing gaps. I sent you all a video of Representative Bobby Scott, who's the chairman of the Education Committee, saying that the dollars that they have appropriated through the Relief Act, the billions and billions of dollars, is predicated on all school districts in the United States closing what he called the achievement gaps. And we're not calling it achievement gaps, we're calling it opportunity gaps, or educational debt, whatever we want to call it. But state federal law, State Board of Education, this is incredibly important. So, as I said, for unanimity, I'm certainly willing to go with option number 1. But when we get to the mission statement over the next number of weeks, as Trustee Matlow and Trustee Kumar has said, we've got to have that closing opportunity gaps there because the vision and mission are the starting points for the MyKIP process. I want to make sure that this board gives very definite, unambiguous direction to the MyKIP team that all children should be educated and reach those same levels of achievement. And that is not true in this district and never has been. And we need to strive towards that. So closing, whatever term we want to use, closing opportunity gaps, achievement gaps, or educational debt is incredibly important. So therefore, I will only go with option number 1 as long as we commit that over the next month or so, when we talked about the mission statement, that those words end up in that mission statement somehow.
that part's not a pat decision, but what I can speak to, and I hope you didn't take by me not liking number 2, that I don't agree with the content. I've lived that content my whole life. You know, I've been in education 30 years, but the content you're referring to is how I grew up. You know, my son is an educator as well. So to think that is, I want to make sure you understand, that's something we talk about all the time. Making sure all students have the opportunity to have an opportunity, as it says, empower every student to achieve their goals. That means also allowing student voice. Their goals might be different than what we think they should be, but we need to meet the students where they're at. This is their journey. But I hope you truly understand, Trustee Barron, that the opportunity to have an opportunity is important for all people.
All right, so we have,
Can I just say something? Yeah, I mean, because Howard and I feel the same way about this. The concern, and I agree that the language of that vision statement is more elegant, number one. It's more elegant to be a vision statement. But the concern is accountability. Us as a board, you know, like Howard just said, our job is to set a very clear beacon, which gives very clear, unambiguous direction as to what the goals are going to be, then the strategies are built out from that, and that there is some way to assess all this. And however wonderful number 1 is, it can't be assessed. I mean, it can be assessed subjectively, anecdotally, but it can't be assessed in a measurable way.
Either qualitative or quantitative.
And so my concern is that we as a board fall down on our job if we don't have a way to ensure that we are doing what we say we're going to do. That's actually that was my slogan when I ran for this board, right? I was like, our district says a lot of great things, but I don't know that there's any result.
So
I just had a question about that. Is there not accountability built into our strategic plan build-outs, our annual goals, our district goals, our superintendent goals, and our board goals? I don't think that by eliminating the accountability and measuring piece from the vision, it means we're eliminating it from the district.
I just think yes, that is certainly a possibility, but it's also possible that it goes the other way. I think just, you know, at the very top of this food chain, which is mission and vision, we have to set that guidepost. So I will definitely support number 1, but I'm telling you right now, I'm going to have a fit if there's nothing in the mission statement that can't be assessed in a semi-objective manner.
So I appreciate that, but I have a wondering. When we talk about a system, right, so we're talking about having systems, and this has nothing to do with mission, like that's down, whatever, it is what it is. A system that is inclusive and equitable. What does that look like? What does that sound like? Is that not potentially a further conversation? Absolutely. In our district, this is what it looks like. Well, how are we meeting what it looks like? That's measurable. It looks like this in the classroom. It looks like a robust set of literature. It looks like students having options to select. Here's the theme, the hero's journey. Here are 10 novels. Which novel do you select? Is that not equitable and inclusive potentially? Are we doing that then? Again, this has nothing to do with the mission, but as an almost 30-year educator, if I wanted to find things that I could assess from this, I could create a list of look-fors and listen-fors that as a district we would do, or some type of decision-making tree where it says, all right, board, there's a decision, okay, what's our vision? System that is, you know, inclusive and equitable. Let's go through the checklist. How are we making sure it's inclusive? How are we making sure it's equitable? And if we can't come to a consensus that we've checked off and said, yes, it is, based on the parameters we set, that's accountability as well. Then you know what? Maybe we shouldn't, maybe you shouldn't approve that. Maybe then it needs further conversation, or my team and I need to bring you further things. But if the ask is like, well, how do we really live up to these high aspirations? I don't think it's that difficult really to figure out and do it. This is like the work we do in education all the time. Again, nothing to do with the mission. Mission will be whatever it is.
Sorry, you're done.
Yeah, sorry.
The only thing that I don't want to do is make a promise that may not be kept. So I wouldn't want to sit here and guarantee, and I hear you, Howard, but as we go through the process, me being honest, I could not sit here and say I would guarantee that closing the opportunity gap or equity gap would be in the mission. I support, because I can't speak for the other 6 people in the room. We may come to a conversation and that be different as far as the mission goes. I liked the fact that we're talking about the opportunity gap, the equity gap, the achievement gap. As a parent who has children in the district, and looking at the numbers and not necessarily seeing a change in certain populations as we graduated out students. I think it definitely, going back to your point, if you don't see it in the mission, it normally means that it gets left off the table historically in districts. And if we don't have Pat Watson as our superintendent, there's no guarantee that it will be, lived out. So I hear your concerns, and I can feel what you believe, what you stand for. But I wouldn't want to sit here and say I can guarantee anything. But I would support the fact that in some capacity that we look at the gaps that exist for all of our students. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think number 2 or any statement that we would write would be a guarantee. To me, it's more like a commitment to addressing the issue and a commitment to holding ourselves accountable
Most
for
definitely.
addressing the issue.
And I will be there with you every moment of the day when we talk about gaps and addressing and those issues. But, I have 3 years? If I run again, I'll have, more years. But at the same time, I hear what you're saying. When it doesn't exist in a language, sometimes it gets left off the table, and there's no action behind it. So I would agree.
Howard?
I've got a book at home, and I didn't bring it tonight, and I forgot the terminology, but there are 2 types of goals or, vision statements like this, where ones are, I'm going to call them concrete. I don't think that's the term, but basically, by next year, you will do this. The other ones are aspirational, and it's expected that you're going to work really hard, but if you don't get there, we, the management, will understand because you put an honest effort into it. In the original vision that I wrote, that when, back a month or 2 ago, I used the word strive. Bloomfield Hills will strive to eliminate the effects of educational debt, opportunity gap, whatever. And therefore, the strive is not we will, but we're going to work really hard towards getting there. Just the way, Martin Luther King says the curve of justice, bends, or bends towards justice. And we've been on a 250-year march towards equity within, and all men are created equal. And we're not there yet as a country. So the same way here with the opportunity gap, we can wordsmith a little bit if it feels too absolute. Adding a word like strive or something like that gives us a little bit of flexibility, but still, what I really just want is this board gives direction to the organization all the way, because this vision goes all the way down, this is the old, going up to a teacher and say, what is the vision for the district? What is or the mission? And I want that to be so instilled, and I talked earlier about coherence, such that all the way down to the teacher level and the bus driver and the maintenance worker, that they know that we are not equitable right now, and that's one huge vision, mission, goal of ours, coming from the top of the organization throughout, that we want to make sure that economically disadvantaged children, African American children, ELL children, special education children should be able to reach the same levels that all the vast majority of these district students do, and that has not been the case in this district. And of all districts in the state who have the opportunity to do it, we are.
All right, I want to bring this back.
Can we hear what Pat has to say real quick? I'm sorry.
30 seconds, I promise. I just want to say, I really appreciate this conversation, because really what we're talking about is not really so much mission and vision. How do we do great things for all of our students that we serve, right? That's really what we're talking about. So I appreciate the conversation.
How do we provide evidence, right?
Right.
I'm sure, I know miracles are happening in this district every day, but, you know, in medicine, we say, if you don't write it down, it didn't happen, right? Because it's out in the ether. We need to build that evidence, and that's why I'm for these strong statements.
Great
Yeah.
points. I'm really, seriously, I'm enjoying the conversation and the passion, because it's
You
important.
know, because, so say opportunity gap or its equivalent appears in the mission and vision, you can draw a very short, straight line to the metrics that we've been working on, John, Michelle, Pat, in this BIC group, where that bottom row, right, of where we want to be in 5 years and all the disaggregated groups, you know what your goal is to make those numbers look the same, right, as much as possible. And so that's it. You know, I get nervous about, oh, that's okay, the accountability will be over there somewhere, right? I would really like to see it right up top.
But it also will show up on the dashboard, so that the dashboard will align with this mission, vision, and goals.
So let me bring this back. What I've heard early on, before, and this has been a great discussion, is we can rally around the first vision. We have some work to do on the mission. We're not going to guarantee, nothing in life's a guarantee, right? We're not going to guarantee anything, but we will be working on the mission over the next couple of weeks. So with that, and I think we've heard a lot, can we rally around Vision 1?
Mr. President. So, yes, we're going to work on the mission later, but I will tell you that if this board decides in the mission not to include some of these words, then I would move at that point to revise the vision statement. I mean, the vision statement is not in stone. It shouldn't be. It should be. But if we get to that point and this board decides not to put these words in, then I would make a motion at that time to revise the vision statement. I don't want to do that.
But at this time, can we rally around the vision statement?
Just realize, in a sense, the line I'm drawing in the sand here.
No, I understand, but, you know, right, as Michelle said, and I think she's absolutely right, nothing's a guarantee, but can we rally around the vision statement?
I can, but with the shared understanding, I mean, somebody told me when I first got to this table that there's a thing in education. It's like you can provide the gourmet dish, right? You can serve it up wonderfully, but is it going to be received? Is it going to be eaten? Is it going to be digested, right? And there's a pitfall there in education between what actually happens at the end of the road, and that it's a kind of a trap that you can set these lofty goals for here's the dish, but that you don't know that it's been eaten or digested. So I just want everyone to understand that I think that the statement number 1 has that weakness in it, that we are here's this gorgeous thing, but we don't have a way to know if we're coming through.
And we do have some homework on the mission, right? You know, that we need to get back to to Michelle, and some of this discussion now can be fed to Michelle, not Michelle Southward, Michelle Harmala, Michelle Harmala to start crafting, a draft of the mission statement that we're going to be working on.
Realize also in any of these things, we're not talking about individual students, because for individual students, there's going to be a bell curve. Certain students are going to do very well, certain students are not going to do well. But what we're looking at are the subgroups and the systemic issues that certain groups of students, as a collective, don't do as well as other students. That's a systemic problem. That's a problem with us as an organization, because they all come to us.
Problem with the whole world.
Pardon me?
I said it's a problem with the country, it's a problem with the world.
That's right. But we as number one, U.S. government and President, Congress, and the Senate have all said these are issues that we need to address. It's just like George Floyd's issue.
Actually, can we get back on topic? Seriously.
So it's a
Point of
problem with the
order.
country, but we, individual school districts, have the responsibility to address it.
All right, well.
And just like lickety-split, I want to be clear that I'm not just talking about standardized test scores. It's a
No.
very small piece of the pie. We have a robotics team that's expensive to be on, and we don't have persons of color on that team or economically disadvantaged kids on that team. I'm sure that a lot of the sports teams have this. I know that it's theater too, because I've had a kid in theater.
Music lessons.
Right? It's a complex web, and I think we have opportunities here to work on that aspect in a big way, maybe even in a faster way than the straight-up test scores and grades.
And realize also in terms of test scores, these aren't necessarily M-STEP. It's using FastBridge, it's using Fontes-Pinnell, it's using other internal metrics that not only gives us better data, but faster turnaround to be able to see that, what the state does, I could care less. It's what we see internally.
I just want to make clear to anyone who's listening, what I'm hearing Superintendent Watson telling us is these are problems that are concerning and are prioritized from everyone in the district and the state and the country. These are things that we're working on, but they're also very complex. And writing it in a mission statement or in a vision isn't going to necessarily motivate people who are already very motivated to fix this. You have a group of people in this district, everybody in this district, working really hard on these issues already. And just because it's not written in a mission statement or a vision as specific words, opportunity gaps, doesn't mean that they're not already working really hard at trying to identify causes and fix some of the disparity.
What is the harm of putting it in? 3 or 4 words. What's the harm?
To me, I mean, what resonated with me personally is what Pat said at the beginning. There's a laundry list of things that then you would also want to include that are equally as important to achieving the goal, one of student achievement at all levels, particularly focused on gaps. But by saying that, without including a list of every single way that we're doing it, it's almost limiting the conversation instead of expanding it. He's saying, what I'm hearing him say is by focusing on equity and inclusion, which is in the vision, it leaves open room for many different forms of equity and inclusion, including but not limited to gaps.
Okay, we can put some of those words in.
Howard,
Yeah.
how about we give it some time and work through the mission statement before getting ourselves all wound up in the vision statement, right? Let's go with this for now, right? It's not precluding us from revisiting the vision statement if we're not happy with the way the mission statement pans out, right?
Yeah, I think we could, I think we're okay, what I'm hearing is we're okay to rally around the vision, we're working on the mission, we could always revisit the vision, and we're gonna be spending time on the mission. Michelle?
You may want to add some suggestions only because when I read through the suggestions for the mission statement, they lean a little bit less toward what we just talked about. So you may want to send some suggestions about language around what we were talking about with equity, bridging the gap, because it's not currently.
Now that we've approved approving the vision, we might want to go back and look at the words we put in the mission statement.
100%.
And recraft them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
Michelle
definitely want to go, you definitely want to go back and look at them
Not Michelle
because
Salford, Michelle
it
Harmer
would.
has a homework assignment that we're still, it's been extended.
Yeah,
for
so
the
it's not
mission.
just what we, snapshot back, 2 months ago. We might want to revise some of those words.
With that, right, and I think we're on the same page, and we want to kind of reach consensus. Can I get a motion?
I move that the Board of Education adopt option 1 for its vision statement in its strategic plan, which says the Bloomfield Hills Schools will empower every student to achieve their goals through a system that is inclusive and equitable for all.
Can I get support?
Support.
Support? All those in discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. And adjournment. Thank you, everybody. Long day, we accomplished a lot.